Whenever you're ready.
All right. Watching the clock.
I'm good.
Okay, I will call the Town of Essex Selectboard meeting for Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023 to order. Speakers in the cabinet. Okay. You adjust that. Greg, are there any agenda changes from staff? Any agenda changes requested from board members? Okay, then we will move on to public to be heard. Public to be heard is the time of the agenda when attendees can address the select board on town business items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak during public to be heard, you can either raise your hand in the room or using the raise your hand function in the Zoom meeting room. To find the button to raise your hand, you can float your cursor on the toward the bottom of your screen, and there'll be a pop-up window that says reactions. If you click on that, it'll offer you the opportunity to raise your hand. And so I saw Mary Post's hand first. Come on up, introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do I have to do anything with this? Don't I just leave
the microphone?
Okay. Everything I touch sort of like gets messed up. I'm here because I want to talk about Front Porch Forum. I wrote what I thought was a really nice composition for them to put on Front Porch Forum because it had to do with helping citizens like myself understand what's happening politically. And this had to do with our little group that we call Polytalk, which is open to anyone, and we always treat people respectfully, and it's been a great place where we can talk to one another about issues that come on and learn about what does this mean? What has anybody heard about this? And we don't all agree, and so anyone's invited, and I feel it's a safe place. So I wrote this letter to Front Porch Forum saying that, inviting people to join Polytalk. I included in it that we decided that to further help people, we would make a Facebook page, kind of like our Essex page where people can write in and ask questions or, say who's in trouble, whatever. Excuse me. And say there's going to be a Facebook page. So if you can't go to a meeting or don't want to come, you could maybe type in a question and we would try to have somebody answer it. Just communication. That's all it is. So the answer that I got back from them was, thanks for your participation in the local Front Porch Forum. In general, we do not welcome efforts to steer Front Page Forum members away from Front Page Forum toward competing local Facebook groups. So your posting below will not be published. Please consider using Front Page Porch Forum for your discussions. Best wishes. And I got to thinking that Front Porch Forum, I know that our town supports it financially. Number one, a lot of people aren't on Front Porch Forum, so using that as a vehicle to get the word out about what's going on in town is not maybe the best. And then I've gotten some other information from others that at least 3 members of our community have been banned, probably more. And so if even one member of the community is actively excluded from receiving notices, how can the town support it? And what they've done, at least for the one person I know, it's been nothing egregious. It's just been that there was one little rule that was broken, and most of us are forgiven for those. There's arbitrary censorship. They will decide what can be discussed and what can't. I've had other things turned away before, and I can't even remember why. They just didn't think that it was, appropriate. And not that it wasn't appropriate. I don't think I'm ever inappropriate. But they make it up to them what's going to be printed or not. And the fact that they're a for-profit business means that we can't look at any of the financial records. So we have then, in my mind, any way of understanding, a group that we pay a lot of money to that decides who will be heard and who won't be heard. And I do believe, it's in my opinion, that in the past, and I really hope that this is all over. I think that it is. I'm optimistic. Because if you're on a select board, and in the past, if you were on the even the trustees, then a member that's on, like a select board member, they can put a posting on any of the front porch forum sites. As a citizen, you cannot. So in the past, I believe that there have been some members that have used this for political advantage, even though it's been kind of hidden. And citizens have not been able to respond. So that's been something that's been kind of a sore point for me too. So I'm thinking, since this is a budget time, I would rather that instead of whenever the next time comes up to support Front Porch Forum, that we not support them, and that instead we really work hard to get the word out about the town notifications that we have on our website, and the notify me, the civic readiness, all this stuff, which I'm just learning about and I have signed up for. And I would rather that we go that way rather than supporting, as a town, supporting financially Front Porch Forum. I have supported Front Porch Forum myself because I do like to be able to see if someone's lost a dog or if someone needs some help with something. But I think for the town to support it, that amount of money is money probably not well spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Very much.
How much do we spend?
It's less than $3,000.
Yeah. That's
And
okay.
it is one of the, if we survey people every now and then and hear about how they hear about things, that Front Porch Forum is one of the leading sources of people getting information from us. We try to do Facebook, we try to do the website, we try to do newspapers, but it is one of
Well,
the,
wasn't that before we had our own new thing that we're starting now about notification?
it's been a while since we've asked, but
and
it
this,
has
I
been a
think,
source.
this notification from the town, to me anyway, something we really should try to spend more time getting people familiar with. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, I saw Bruce Post's hand up next. Bruce, go ahead.
Yep. Hi, this is Bruce. I'm going to say something unrelated to what Mary had to say. And this is actually for Greg as the chief of staff and town manager. For someone, nice beard, Greg. But I don't know whose idea it was to decorate Sand Hill Park this year. And I happened to go over before a snowstorm to gas up for my snowblower, and the trees and the outbuilding and everything were so warm and inviting. Sand Hill Park is dark, dark, dark so much of the year. And to see that bit of festive brightness was really inspiring and heartwarming. And I don't know who's responsible for that, but I certainly hope, Greg, you would communicate that to them. If that was your brilliant idea, I congratulate you. Okay, well, yeah, you can bank that congratulation for something in the future then. But it was really lovely, and I wanted to get that across to the staff. And I'll keep quiet now. I just want to note that Cindy Lane is overrepresented there tonight. I think there are 3 of us from Cindy Lane at the meeting. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, Bruce, thank you very much for that. That was the Parks and Rec Department joint effort from them, and I would be happy to pass on the praise.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Bruce. Betsy, I saw your hand next.
Yes, Betsy Dunn. I'm just going to add on to what Mary was saying about Front Porch Forum. The only thing I have an issue is when it comes time for an election. And the people who are in positions of power, i.e. you guys, you have access to all 5 of the forums. And you don't have to pay anything to put the town is paying, but the individual person doesn't have to put anything down. And I think that is unfair advantage. I think that if you're going to be running for something, you have to have the same limitations that the person who, if I was going to run, then I could post in my own Front Porch Forum area, and I'd have to pay to be in the other ones to get my message. And I think that is an issue. I think that is unfair.
So I'm not sure that's correct though, Betsy, because when I have run and used Front Porch Forum for advertising, Front Porch Forum is very upfront and insistent that I pay for that those postings be paid for, and I pay by the inbox. I can actually you can pick which neighborhoods exactly you go to, and you do have to pay for.
Well, I'll
for all of
relook at
those.
it, but I was pretty sure that that was where it was when I was running, when I was running for office. And so it's just been yanking me. And when I heard Mary talk about it,
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe the rules have changed, but when I ran for the, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Patty Davis.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I haven't been to a select board meeting in a very long time, but I appreciate what everybody's saying. And I do donate to the Front Porch Forum. And I donate whenever I can for the town of Essex, now that we're the town of Essex, anywhere I can help. What I want to say is, what I would like to see is, I'm glad that the select board, we're putting our heads together. I want us to figure out somehow to encourage people to not only post on Front Porch Forum or come to the Polytalk meetings, but not be shy to come to your select board meetings to talk about, what they want for services in Essex, what they want for, how they feel about now that we're separate, and what they want to give, what they expect to get, because I know you're talking about the budget, and people are shy. People do not want to come to the meetings. They actually reach out to people that do come to these things like Polytalk or do post on Front Porch Forum. And I just want to announce that, the town, now that we're the town, really wants and needs your input. And I know only the town Essex, the town plan is not due till 2024, and that's only one little aspect. But even if you have a concern, everybody should have received a postcard if there's for 2 weeks in January. And Betsy can even speak to you more on this, or Ken or anybody. If we can just get people to come, and you're not going to be judged. You are just welcome to come and share what you want to see for our new town of Essex now that we're all by ourselves. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Patty. Hey, anyone else? I don't see any hands up in the room.
Mr.
And,
Chairman, there was someone named Megan that was up there before with a hand up. And I'm not sure where.
So there was, yeah,
There she
it
is.
says Megan Elizabeth's iPhone. You could identify yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys, it's Megan Humphreys joining. I can provide some clarity into Front Porch Forum. The town has I work in communications. The town has the ability to post across multiple boards because it's considered sort of municipal news, and you can update everyone. I think the difference is, as a person, you, Andy, can't post across without paying for it and paying for the advertising. So I think there's a little bit of nuance in there that makes the rules different for different circumstances. I also wanted to talk just for a minute about another topic, if I could. One of the things is we have been, thinking about Essex on our own and about the tax increase that is coming and upon our doorstep. Have there been any thoughts to the actual impact of that increase, either from our, fixed income residents or lower income residents? Has there been any feedback about that increase and any potential financial support for those residents that cannot afford a 22% plus property tax increase? Thanks for considering that.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. We do have the discussion about the budget a budget on the agenda, and yeah, that's been a concern, and in fact, we've gotten very, very little feedback at all from anybody about the budget.
That surprises me, given how much fervor there was for increased taxes should the other scenario have played out. And I think I'll be talking to my friends about, coming to the charter meeting or getting a little bit more involved, because I know it will really be a hardship for a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah, we certainly get that and are very concerned about that, but I don't know that we have any mechanism for including an income sensitive component to our tax rate. And I guess with regard to the front porch forum, your comments, there's select board members are allowed to make 2 postings a month to all forums. If you essentially have 2 accounts. If you're a select board member, one as a select board member and one as an individual, you don't necessarily have to have the individual one, but I do. I have both. You can post twice a month, town business twice a month, and you can do personal ones as many times as you'd like, as long as it passes the other rules that Front Porch Forum has. And I guess as a candidate, as I've been a candidate in the past, Front Porch Forum was very clear. They read everything before they post it. They were very clear. I put something out there that was related to my campaign that I had to pay for. So it was very, they were very upfront on that. And Betsy, I know it used to be true that select board members could post as many times as they want. It changed fairly within the last 4 or 5 years to limit it to only 2 posts. So other rules may have changed also. Yeah, in the old days, right. All right. Thanks, Megan, for your comments. Right. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to our first business item. Consider adopting official copy of proposed charter amendments for town meeting vote. Greg, we had talked about this at our last meeting, and there were a number of items we asked you to go look at.
There were. I'm going to try to pull it up on the screen to share with everybody. Basically, took the comments from the last select board meeting, made some changes, proposed them to the town attorney, went back and forth with him a little bit, and we came up with some language to propose tonight that staff and the town attorney are both comfortable with for to finalize to present to voters, or at least for the 2 public hearings that are coming up. So I will pull that up and happy to take any questions about any of the language that's in there. So the first one is the reorganization of the charter. That was basically just adjusting the section numbers, the rearranged charter. There was one section where the town attorney had a recommendation. Let me just find that. I'll do that in a moment, Scott. This was in section 117.701. The charter referenced entities that don't exist anymore: the Essex Town School District, the Village of Essex Junction School District. Since those have consolidated, the town attorney recommended deleting those sections. Apart from that, it's just the reorganization as recommended by the Charter Review Committee.
And the fact that you didn't bring up any legal concerns, that was the question, is if rearranging inadvertently caused some problem, and apparently it seems to be okay.
Correct.
Any comments or concerns or questions about that from board members? Do you want to open to public discussion after each item, or wait till the end?
It works for you.
I think it'd be more beneficial to get feedback as we go through it.
Okay. Right. So any comments from the public regarding the? See if I can get back to my view here where I can see hands. I see Bruce Post's hand up.
Yep. Hi, Bruce Post, 1 Cindy Lane. I was a member of the Charter Committee. And one of the things we did want to do is try to have a better flow. So I think you may have achieved that. I do have a question on one particular section. It's on the screen right now, 117.703 budget.
Page?
And it says an annual budget shall be adopted at town meeting by the vote of the majority of those eligible to vote present at the meeting. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean from the floor, or does that mean the next day at open to everybody who can vote? I'm just a little confused by that.
Well, I assume it means those who come to vote. Since there's been a vote to move the budget to the ballot, those who attend the meeting, the meeting is adjourned until the following day, so it is considered still part of town meeting.
Okay.
The time that the polls are open, and
Yeah, I just wondered about it. It's not particularly explicitly clear. And I don't remember the staggered course that moving to the ballot took, but there you go. That was just my one observation there. Thank you very much.
yep, thanks, Bruce. And one of the things that we intend to do is, I know there were a lot of wording changes that were proposed by the charter committee as well. I have proposed to Greg that we put charter review on as a standing agenda item, or at least have it at least once a month going forward after town meeting, to review that those other language change proposals that came from the charter committee, so that we're moving toward, potentially having another update next year that has some of that clarifying language included. So that thought that you've just raised may come up again and be make sense to address.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andy.
There's the whole question of, early voting and all that too, which they're not actually present at the meeting, although their ballots do show up there. So it's a we do intend to go back and do a review of the wording changes suggested by the committee as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Margaret.
A little card that says "Don't touch the microphone." Right here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I went on the website, and I have to admit I'm having computer difficulties right now. But in any case, when I opened the packet to read through the charter amendment and saw the page with all the underlining and the strike through, and I was on the charter committee and I had no idea what it said or where things moved or what was going on, and I was extremely frustrated. So if I felt that way, I can imagine anybody who wasn't there trying to figure out what it was. There was no key that said these are strike throughs because, these are underlined because, this got moved here, this got renumbered. There was no guidance on how to read that, and it just looked like a horrible mess to me. So anyway, my 2 cents worth.
All right. Thanks, Margaret. The intent, there's only the one change. The reference to the school district was the only deletion. Everything else was just a rearranging. But I guess you're right. It could
if you look at it and
Yep.
some of it's purple and some of it's blue and some of it's just like, what is this? So it was extremely confusing. So
Right. Thank you, Margaret.
good luck getting
As
feedback.
as we go forward, we're gonna have 2 public meetings, and we will try to see if we can make it clear what's going on there. Hey, I see Lorraine Zaloom. Remember,
Hi, thank you, Chair Watts. I had the same concern that Bruce had regarding the budget. I know and it looked like in the packet from Greg's recommendation was to add that vote, the ballot to budget vote. So I don't know if that's added in March to vote on, would that also go into the charter? Because the way it reads, it says that those eligible present at the meeting, which I understand what you're saying, that even though the meeting is kind of open, is that how it's interpreted, that the people voting and there's early voting and all those things that we said? Because I thought last time we talked about moving that meeting earlier, so it's not the day before even, to account for issues like early voting. It's just, I don't know. That looks to me like it still reads like only people who show up at the meeting this time pass that budget the way we have in the past.
So Lorraine, we had a townwide vote that whether to take the budget to ballot. That vote passed, so we have to follow that regardless of what the language in the charter is. I think the language in the charter does cover the fact that the meeting is adjourned till the next day.
It does.
All of the ballots show up at that meeting, even though the individuals who cast them may not. So it's the balloting.
Because the ballot voting does count as part of town meeting, so that's why the language is still valid. People casting ballots are still at town meeting when they're casting their ballots.
Okay, cool. And that's obviously legal has gone through that, and it's just too bad that that part isn't included in that ballot, the part that you have on the screen right now, because there was another reference I saw just saying that it was still open somewhere that kind of references back to it, but it's just not clear from that one particular section.
Or under the town meeting part.
There might be, I also want to clarify that this potential charter change is only looking at a reorganization of the charter. As Andy said earlier, we're going to take a look at different cleanup as the goal going forward. But this is strictly taking the existing charter and rearranging it as recommended by the in the order recommended by the Charter Review Committee.
Right, so we're not getting any new language.
Okay, so then to go back to what Margaret's saying, then this part of the discussion, you guys are breaking the discussion down into the different components. This part is just about reorganizing in a more readable way. And just that one change that I saw that you referred to in there, that was noted on the side. Okay.
And my proposal was that we go through chapter by chapter, cover a chapter during a meeting so that we're not, spending. Sorry.
I'm trying to fix it.
Oh, somebody's got a. So we're hoping to review a chapter at each meeting, that we have it on the agenda and agree on the language, and then so that we're not trying to cram all that all the language changes into the period of time that we're also working on the budget approaching next year's town meeting. We're not this a yes vote on this reorganization doesn't change functionally anything except it we're the proposal to remove the reference to the school district's fiscal year, which is essentially irrelevant.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Betsy.
Just a quick thing. Could you possibly on that first sentence put in parenthesis note, town meeting lasts till the end of voting on the subsequent day at 7 p.m.
It does say in there that town meeting is adjourned until the next day. So it says that right in the charter.
Later on. I'm just saying right there, just so that people are aware, because just for clarity.
Okay. Thanks, Betsy. Eddie Davis.
Yeah, I agree with Betsy, but my sentence is if we can just clarify every time you have a meeting up until March, just say like what Greg said, ballots cast are considered part of town meeting, period. One sentence every meeting so everybody gets it. That's my suggestion.
All right. Thanks, Patty.
Thanks.
Hey, anyone else? Keep jumping back into full screen view so I can't see hands. Now I can see it. All right. So do we, I guess we'll get to the end and then we'll talk about motions. So, okay. All right, then the next, go ahead, Greg. Next one.
Next one is about the ability to set fees, giving the town the ability to pass an ordinance to set fees. This is as proposed by the Charter Review Committee. We had talked about putting in another section, another item in there that would allow the clerk's office to collect fees for catering licenses, liquor licenses. Doing some more research into that. Not really sure if that needs to be part of the charter. We think it might be able to be done by ordinance, and if not, it's something that we think we can take up over the next year and do some more research. Bring it forward as another round of charter amendments if we need to. If we don't need to, we could pursue it potentially already as a just an ordinance.
Any board member? Go ahead.
Would that be covered under 9? Other activities that the town has the power to regulate or license?
It's possible.
Or do we have?
It might fall into there. We looked to Susan found looked to Williston as an example. Susan, the town clerk, they have ordinance that allows them to set fees. So it's just want to do some more diligence on where exactly the right process is. But we think we might be able to do it without an ordinance change, and this might capture it too.
Other comments, questions? Board members? Any comments from the public on setting fees? Don't see any hands in the room or don't see any hands online. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Okay. Next one is about just cause eviction and an ordinance allowing the town of Essex to pass an ordinance against just cause eviction. This one has been stripped down quite a bit from what was proposed by the Charter Review Committee. The Select Board talked about wanting to simplify things, not being too prescriptive in the language of the charter, taking that stuff up in an actual ordinance if we get to that case. You talked about doing kind of a skeleton structure. Originally was thinking about, do we keep in, what just cause eviction is? There are some definitions in the previous iteration. Talking to the town attorney, we recommend just keeping that very simple language about the possibility of passing a just cause eviction ordinance. My understanding of, or my takeaway from the conversation about the skeleton language was to help people understand what this is. We think we can do that through Q&As and public information, getting some word out ahead of time before the vote, and keeping the ordinance, or keeping the charter as simple and as straightforward as possible, which is what's proposed here.
All right, thanks, Greg. Any comments, questions, board members?
I guess I'm afraid that might be a little bit of a double-edged sword, where would the legislature be more, if this were to pass in March, would the legislature be more inclined to take this up and approve if it contained that skeleton language, or if it was just a completely blank slate? I don't know what the answer is.
And the legislature could add all of that language for us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That was my concern at our last meeting, because the way I had understood it was the language that was proposed to us was, kind of the language that they were trying to push forward to the legislative body to adopt on a state level. Because even if they do adopt this, we create an ordinance. There's no state legislative that's passed. Our ordinance won't be worth anything at the state level.
If the state wants us to have any specific content in it, they will add it as they approve it.
Good point.
Okay, that was my only concern, because that was my concern at the last meeting. But I guess I didn't. I did say it 3 times. I just wanted to throw that out there too. That was one of the biggest things that I was concerned about, and I agree with the ordinance, because then we can make it specific to Essex once it can be backed at a state level. We don't have to include everything. We can include more maybe, or whatever we decide. But it's important, and I'm glad to see it in here. So,
Any comments? Any comments from the public? Don't see any hands in the room. See any hands online. Okay, next one.
Next one is the recall provision. This one was modified a bit, stripped down a bit from what the charter review committee had proposed. The select board wanted to, I think, simplify this one as well. Clarify that the petition would go straight to the town clerk, take out the involvement of the Board of Civil Authority, which is what was originally proposed, and just set the number of voters who would have to participate in a recall and in an election, and added the language about a recall provision not being brought against any one individual more than once in a 12-month period. So that's what's proposed here. I believe we captured all of those things.
There's also a 60-day provision that what was proposed didn't
That's
have
right.
didn't have a timeline requirement.
Correct. Yep. That if there's a petition, it has to be acted upon within 60 days.
And we left the option for the select board to appoint to fill the seat for current charter rather than triggering a second election to do that.
Correct.
Any comments, Tracy?
Just a really quick question. The replacement provisions, it's a may appoint a successor. This has shall. So which would rule in that case?
So it also says that if the select board doesn't appoint, then you have to have an election.
Right, but this says shall.
The
So
shall,
does this fit this too in the
I,
event of a recall?
I read this as the select board shall name a successor in accordance with the
Okay.
provisions of the charter.
Okay.
And that's where it says that you shall do it this way. If you can't reach a agreement, that's when it has a special election.
Okay.
So I read this as referencing that you shall go to that section of the charter,
Okay.
making a replacement.
Ethan?
I just had a clarification question about item B where it says within 60 days of receiving a ballot petition, the select board shall call a special meeting. Is that within 60 days or is that they have to call a meeting within 60 days? And then how long do you have to call the meeting? Is it the regular 2 weeks? Huh?
They would have to hold they'd have to hold a special meeting within
Or
those
noise.
60 days.
Within 60 days. Okay.
Yep.
That was the only thing I just had when I was reading it. I was like, that within 60 days or call the meeting within 60 days, and when does the meeting have to happen? Other than that, looks good.
Done anything? Okay, any comments from the public? Brad? Go ahead. You recall that you have spoken to us before, and we heard what you've said, so if you could
Well,
avoid
this-
repeating stuff you said before, that would be good.
well, I think needs to be a understanding about registered voters and active registered voters, and some of this language in the revised proposal is rather convoluted, and I'd like to kind of walk through that.
So, do you have specifics of what you
Yes,
want to?
I do. In in section D of the proposal, where it says the select board member shall be removed only if at least as many registered voters of the town vote as voted in the election wherein the officer was elected. So if a voter votes in the election, they're considered an active registered voter.
So, Brad, we've talked about this before. We don't want to exclude people who are challenged voters that may be valid voters also. And so
They become valid voters when they verify their residency. They're challenged voters. I mean, we have almost 730, 750 challenged voters.
Mhm.
Only 6 in the November election validated their residency.
that doesn't mean all the rest of them are invalid voters. That does not imply that the rest of them are invalid.
Okay, so let's take a look at section D again. Okay, so in that first part, you're talking about registered voters that voted. They are active voters, active registered voters. In the second part, it says at least 1/3 of the registered voters of the town vote, whichever is greater. So you're talking about two different things. In the first part, you're talking about active registered voters. In the second part, you're talking about registered voters, which is the total number on the voter checklist.
But they're not identified as active registered voters in the document, just as registered voters. A challenged voter can come to the polls and vote.
Correct. But when you're talking about,
So Brad, we're not,
well, if we can,
we're not going to change that language. I think we were pretty firm the last time we talked about this topic that we're not going to exclude challenged voters because they are all valid voters, potentially valid voters, and we're not going to exclude them. Yeah,
potentially.
Yes.
But until they verify their residency, then they are not valid voters.
Yes, they are. They can walk into the polls and vote that day.
Okay.
And so
you've got convoluted language here. I mean, on one hand, it's active registered voters. On the other hand,
it does not say active registered
voters.
voters. It does not say active registered voters. It says registered voters. So a challenged registered voter can come to the polls.
It's implied because if
you are implying, you are adding that implication. It's not in our intent.
Well, this isn't acceptable language, and
Okay.
so
All right. Thanks.
It's unfair to the voters.
Thank you for your comments. Thanks, Brad. Betsy, did you have a comment? I saw your hand.
I was just saying, when you're talking about
My apologies. Okay. Yeah. It's yep. Yeah. If somebody just before the meeting, somebody commented that it was remarkable how well you could hear back there. So I guess we'll work on that. We'll work on that. Okay. Ethan.
Can I just bring a point of clarification? Because I also read through this and it was brought to my attention, but I read it and understood as it's written. It does say at least as many registered voters of the town vote as voted in the election wherein the officer was elected. So at that point, it doesn't matter if the same registered voters vote in that election. It just matters that the same amount or at least 1/3 of the registered voters come and vote again. So, you could have 700 voters not vote that voted in the original election, and you could have 700 challenge voters come and vote at the next election. As long as it equates to the amount as the original election or 1/3, whichever is greater, then it's a valid vote. Because I read through it a couple times and just wanted to, if that helped anybody. I hope it but if not,
All right. Thanks,
I
Ethan.
understood it. So.
Yep. Thanks. Any other comments from the public? See any other hands? So let's move on.
Last article for consideration is to allow for the possibility to move to a development review board. Once again, vastly simplified language from what was proposed. Nothing against what was proposed, but just trying to keep it simple. The town attorney thinks the simplest option is to just take the existing language of the select board shall appoint members of the following permanent commissions and positions. And next to zoning board of adjustment, add or development review board. Per state statute, there can either be a zoning board or development review board, but not both. So this would allow the select board to appoint one or the other. And then also below that, in the existing language, the charter talks about establishing a planning commission. The town attorney thought that language was superfluous and could be removed, so recommending that come out as well.
Okay. Any board member comments? Go ahead.
My concern is that I understand the appointment, but I want a date on that as to when it will occur. That was my whole, because we have a tendency to have a great idea and then an idea gets pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And that's why the Charter Review Committee gave it a year after the approval of the charter. And I'd like to see some kind of a timeline remain and that in that one object.
Any other comments? Ethan?
I agree with that. I don't know if it has to be in the charter, but I would like to see a way that it needs to be actually followed through on. And kind of like what we did with the fees, the power set fees. We're giving ourselves the ability to do it, but we don't know when we're gonna do it. So just kind of, I don't know.
Tracy?
I agree with that, and I'm also concerned about having a standing or in the charter that allows the select board to 1 year identify a ZBA, the next year or 2, 3 years down the line, depending on the makeup of the select board, undo that. And what impact that has not only on the members of the board, but also on staff and also on members that go in front of those boards.
Okay, so there's request to have a timeline and concern about having the or in there. Go back and forth, I suppose, in that case scenario. Without input from town staff about what an appropriate schedule would be, do we want to arbitrarily set one for them?
Catherine told the Charter Review Committee it would take a while to establish it. When we said a year, nobody said any different to us. That's why we came up with the 1 year from when the charter passed.
Was it 1 year from when it passes?
So say it
'Cause the
passes the legislature on June 30th, 2023. You then have until July 1st, 2024 to establish a development review board. 1 year.
It wasn't clear to me that you meant the passed by the legislature.
Passed by the legislature, and then from that date when it passes, that was the intent of the board, is that they would have 1 year from the date that it passes, because we have no idea, when it will pass the legislature. So,
Right, could be. Right.
and we don't even know if it will pass. But that's why we're giving them the 1 year from date of passage, and that's why we did it that way, and that's why we wanted the development review board established that way.
Any
But that's
reasonable to.
I think so. I think the reason that staff was looking to not put a date on it was just wanted to make sure we had that conversation publicly about what the transition looks like, how it's going to get there. It has come up in the past and it's been pushed aside in the past. I would argue it's been for valid reasons. If the select board makes it a priority that you want to do it within a year of passage, we'll do it. You hold us to that. You hold yourselves to that. I think by putting a date in there, it does give you more certainty. It also takes away any flexibility if other more pressing concerns or priorities come up. So I could see either way. I think the staff's concern wasn't necessarily about a date specifically, so much as just taking the time to be thoughtful about it and having the time to figure it out and do the right process and engagement to make it happen. I think a year is probably a reasonable amount of time to have those conversations and set a transition period up. Again, that's me speaking. That's not input from the planning commission, the zoning board, comm dev staff, and not knowing what other things might come up in the course of a year. We've had COVID,
Right.
we've had merger, we've had separation, we've had school districts merge, we've had all kinds of different things that we haven't planned for come up.
And we've had COVID pop up. So yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, because things do get and to be passed aside, or we'll get to it in a little while. That was the reason for the specific date, and that we were really pushing not either or. It was for a definite development review board. And I agree with Tracy to take out the or word. We really wanted that board to be established.
Was there a proposal? What do you want to do with the words then? Add back in
Well, to take out the or, and then to put in a date of the wording that would say DRB, would it be established within 1 year of passage of the charter by the legislature? I don't know. Not sure how you'd want
I
it.
just think that you'd have to remove the ZBA in section A1. You'd have to change the wording to say ZBA adjust to Development Review Board. And if you want to put the date in that section, then put it in that section. Or if you want to drop it down as you know, I would bump B and C down to C and D and put it in a section B that the Development Review Board would be implemented within 1 year of approval from legislative committee. I think it'd be the most clear way.
So you'd give a zoning board an expiration date and then give a development review board
Say, yeah,
a creation.
that way to transition, because we still need
Yep.
the zoning board as what we are, and then that gives us the year to transition from the ZBA to, because if they pass it and we just have the DRB in there, then I don't know how that would read to them, but I would think that we would be held responsible to have a DRB upon passage. I don't know if that's, I don't know what
So you can
thinking.
put transition language in your
In
charter,
there, and then
if the
just-
transition language comes out, it's the transition is completed.
Right.
So I guess one of my concerns that I'm having right now is we need to finalize the language tonight in order to get this on the ballot.
Yes, with the caveat, if you have 2 public hearings and you can change the language after the public hearings. So you could either make some amended language tonight, if that's the path you choose, and then have the town attorney review it and potentially change it again, or leave it as is, have the county attorney, sorry, I can't speak. Have the town attorney review it, provide language for you to approve after the second public hearing.
I like that.
That would allow for a transition period.
Yeah, and I believe that the initial language did include transition language that came from the charter committee.
Do we have any of that available, or should I mock up a motion?
Right.
So I don't recall if there was anything explicit in the, because the advice we got from our legal counsel was to make it just the oral language in there and it's out. So I don't know that he reviewed the rest of it. We can certainly, as Greg said, have that review and change the language. Part of the public hearing process.
Is that what you wanted? Yes, so.
Thank you.
Can you read that aloud?
I gotta try and combine the two first. Unless there's
Yeah, that's what's it's hard to
Mhm.
hard to work live on a document you
Right.
want to
Yeah.
complete
Just
tonight.
bring back language.
So,
And I guess just an FYI, that should have been in the December 5th packet. Language. I mean, not that I'm saying we should wordsmith it now, but
Hello?
Bruce, we're not taking public comment right now.
But I can get the language if you want me to look for it. It's on my computer.
I have it right here, Bruce.
Greg is fine.
Okay.
There it is. It's already up there.
So the Charter Review Committee had proposed that Select Board shall appoint members of the following permanent commissions and positions. A Development Review Board will replace the Zoning Board of Adjustment on or before July 1st, 2024. Members shall be appointed on or before, but no later than July 1st, 2024. And Zoning Board of Adjustment will be replaced by Development Review Board on or before, but not later than July 1st, 2024. All appointed terms shall end when the zoning board of adjustment terminates.
Wasn't there also language in there about the number of members?
We took that out though.
Yeah, because
We took that out at the last meeting upon recommendation.
Well, I
'Cause we
just
had,
want to make it clear what we're trying to put back in. Too.
yeah, because I had clarified it. It was they had the language in there. I believe was 5 to 9, and it was actually 3 to 9 in the statute, state statute. But I do have
This is my regular number.
Alternate.
wording in here if you'd like to hear.
Let's read it on
Yeah.
the board.
Well,
The
Yeah, I just had to change the July 4th to within a year from passage of the Vermont legislature.
okay.
and to be clear, I was only talking about those two highlighted ones. I wasn't talking about identifying like number of board members on each, just the transition period. But I also had a thought that if it is on or before language, if we're not sure what that lift would be, I mean, would it make sense to say July 1st, 2025, and then we can do it on July 1st, 2024, if we're ready at that point in time?
Within 2 years of passage, and you can do it sooner.
Right, as long as it's on or before.
sorry, you're pushing it out again.
The possibility of it. And,
So there's this possibility, yeah, right. And the select board sets the town manager's priorities.
I know, I get that.
We could, you know, the sitting select for the time. I shouldn't say we, might not be here. Can make that a priority and measure the manager against it. And so are we okay with, well, first of all, going within X amount of time of passage by the legislature, whether than a date certain? Or should it be something like the beginning of the fiscal year?
No, within the passage of.
So that it is on a July 1. We want it, does that matter whether it's on
I know there's there's transition has to take place because of the way projects are reviewed, and that applications have to go up to a certain point, and then they split between either the zoning board or the planning commission. Currently, the shift to this new review process. I don't know enough right now offhand about how long that takes. Is it just you pick a date, you draw a line, and then everything after that is different, or if you have to clear out a queue? I don't know. I don't know.
How do you deal with projects in progress? I think that's one of the details that needs to be understood.
And it sounds like we can get that answer after this meeting and go from there.
Ethan.
I just have two questions as I'm merging these together. The first was that the community advisory board
That's something else.
isn't, well, the commission on public safety is removed, cemetery commission is removed, and the energy coordinator is all removed from that section. Is that replaced somewhere else? So the select board won't appoint those positions any longer.
They're not appointed now. So those were proposed by the
don't
charter
exist.
review committee.
Those don't exist today.
Okay. That was all. And then I didn't know if,
But that's part of the discussion we have going forward when I said we're going to look at each of the proposed chapters that came from the,
right.
so those will come up again.
Okay.
The questions around those come up,
And then I do have a draft
providing we follow through on
if it's needed.
So, I guess you say you have a draft. What's it say?
So it's section 117-206, appointment by select board. It reads section A, the select board shall appoint the members of the following permanent commissions and positions. Item 1, development review board. Parentheses will replace the zoning board of adjustment. Is it adjustment or administration? Adjustment, right?
Yeah.
Yes, adjustment. Within a year from passage of the Vermont legislature. Item 2 says the zoning board of adjustment, parentheses, will be replaced by the development review board within a year from passage of the Vermont legislature. Section 3 says the planning commission. Section 4 is the town attorney. 5 is the town manager, and then it goes on to be select board may appoint such additional commissions and committees as they feel to be in the best interest of the town, and all other appointed or elective officers authorized by statute. And then C, the terms of all appointments shall commence on the day after the day of appointment unless the appointment is to fill a vacancy in a office, in which case the term shall commence at the time of appointment. The only thing that was changed was item 1 and 2, and then it was then bumped down. Item 2 became 3, 3 became 4, 4 became 5, and then 5B and C became 4B and C.
So I heard Greg ask for a second year, as it in case it can't be done in a year. With the the provision, of course, that again the select board can say, we know we gave you 2 years, but we want you to do it in 1. Is there any consideration of moving that date to within 2 years rather than within 1 year?
Why do you guys keep looking?
And
I'm just looking around.
Government takes a long time.
I understand that, Andy, but how long have we been talking about? Before I even ran for select board, people were discussing a development review board and other things that we keep pushing off, and that my fear is that. So if I give you 2 years, if I cave and say you have 2 years, and you come back to whoever comes back to the select board that we're in 2 years we're not ready, then it's going to get pushed off again. And I don't mean to be, I'm just, and I get it's a lot of work, but I just hate to see things keep, getting, we'll get to it. Well, when, that's just my feeling, but I'm only one person.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Greg.
And if that's the choice, we'll do everything we can and we'll make it happen. I do ask that you take into consideration other existing work and workload. This is primarily going to be a community development project with the planning commission and the zoning board. They have a town plan update that's due a year from now, in 2024. They've got zoning updates. They have other projects that are working on. The town plan is a big one though, and that's going to take up the bulk of the year. It won't be done until town meeting of 2024. They can probably work concurrently on some of these things, but if they can't for other reason, the town plan is going to take priority because that is also the law that has to be updated by 2024, March of 2024. Depending on how much time they have with other stuff, that leaves 4 months to do a transition period.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm happy to wait until we get feedback on which date is more appropriate and what the lift would be. I mean, it sounds like from you what you say 2 years, but I would also like to hear from Catherine on all of the intricacies that you were talking about earlier before setting a date.
Should I just throw a partial, maybe possible compromise out there that we could consider the end of 2024? Because by the time it gets adopted in, let's say, June or July, that's usually about when they're taken up in office in the legislative chamber. Then that would be July of 24. Maybe possibly another 6 months. Just to meet in the middle grounds, not to mean anything. Figure I'd throw it out there.
So again, we have to.
Right,
We did have to have some language kind of finalized tonight. Again, we can tweak it going forward.
Yeah, I mean,
I like the 2 years from adoption, especially given the town plan work that needs to happen in the next year, and we've got a built-in excuse to push it off right there, I think.
So let's start with a year and we can change it next week or in 2 weeks. We're gonna have a public hearing. We're gonna have feedback from staff. We can go final, right?
So we can also pause and go for comment from the public
Yeah.
and then come back to this question to see if we finalize it. Saw Bruce's hand up first. Bruce.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before we talk about a date, and I did craft the date language as part of the commission. Yeah, if you have an option between a zoning board of adjustment or a development review board, neither one is a permanent commission. As Tracy pointed out, a select board could say, we've had enough of the ZBA, let's go to a DRB. And then a year or two later, the composition can change and, let's go back to a ZBA. So I think you have to fish or cut bait and make up your mind, quite frankly, and I would support a DRB. Secondly, if this passes, we're going to have a vote in March, I would presume. And if this passes, that's a pretty good indication that you're going to be going to a DRB, and you can start planning for that. This is not a shot to the moon. And it's been done on other communities around us, smaller communities. And you have a time to start thinking about this. And I would imagine that our charter change is not going to be a particularly controversial charter change. And I would bet it would pass the legislature. And so you have a reasonable confidence if you pass a DRB in March as a vote here, you have time to start thinking through these things. And Ethan's got a compromise for the end of 2024. I think that's fine, but you also have to make up your mind. I think you're going in that direction. I commend you if you support a DRB and not make it optional, because that is dodging the question, and you're going to keep kicking the can down the road, and you're not going to have potentially any stability. So I support the DRB. I don't think the option is good policy making or even good for the future of a ZBA or a DRB or the Planning Commission, because they would be affected by that instability. So thank you. Like I said, I did put a date in there, and we did adopt a date because there's been pushback to this idea starting when I was on the board in 2009. Pat Scheidel and Linda Myers, this was like a third rail. They didn't want to touch it. And I'm sure one of the reasons they don't want to touch it is because the developer community is very comfortable with the relationships they have right now. And it might change. And I think it's time and it needs to change. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce. Betsy.
Betsy Dunn. So the language you have with the year from the legislature approving the charter change works both ways, because they may not take it up this biennium, this first year of the biennium,
right.
And if so, you would have until the 25 that you would end up having the year from when they did it. So I like the 1 year from legislature approval of the charter, that it has to be in place, and I do think it has to be in place. I think we need to have certain language so it's not so wishy-washy. And when Bruce was saying that, lolly, it just went out my head. It'll come back. But I do think that that's the right thing to do, that have it done. And you bring up the town plan. Well, that law was passed to have this new town plan back in 2016. So they've had a lot of time to kind of get themselves ready and geared up for this whole new town plan. It's not in this last year that they should be looking at that. That would be poor planning on their part. So, and the fact that the city, I hate using this because I just don't want to talk about it, but the city managed to put together their DRB very quickly. And I think that we can do it too. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Ken Signorello.
Signorello, as you said. One thing you need to remember is that when you institute a DRB, the Planning Commission is relieved of a lot of work. Development process, the review process that they do now, they will no longer have to do. That means that if they're working on the town plan, they'll only have to work on the town plan. They won't be having to do development review at that point. So if you were to institute the DRB, let's say July 1st, 2023, right from that point on, the Planning Commission is doing nothing but planning. One of their big complaints is they don't have enough time. They cut meetings short because there's so much workload between planning and development review. Fixed. DRB fixes that. So when you're thinking about stretching the time out, the longer you stretch it out, the longer the Planning Commission is stuck with double duty.
Yeah. Mary, come on.
Mary Post. I wasn't going to say anymore, but I have to say thank you to Dawn for bringing up the fact that we keep kicking things down the can. Down, it seems like it's true. For all the years that I've been involved in going to meetings, I can come back to the next one and list all the things that we've talked about that have not been done. And there's always an excuse for it, or it disappears. Memorial Hall was only last year. We were talking about Memorial Hall and nothing's happened. A bunch of us went and signed up to be on a board, but it's like it doesn't exist anymore. There's never communication to tell us what's happening. And it's not just Memorial Hall. It's also wanting to, I'm a little ticked off with this committee because, the charter committee, because they let go the idea of district representation. Way back for years, people have wanted district representation. I took part in all these meetings where we said, this is what we wanted. And then now people are saying, well, no, we never wanted. Yes, we do. And no one still, we're not going to have a discussion about it. And what is it going to take?
So Mary, that's
So generally, I'm just supporting Dawn. I think that it's time that we start putting dates on things or actually work on things and not kick the can down the road. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Any other comments? Patty Davis.
I think this is the best select board meeting where public participation and people are speaking up. This is what this town needs. And my only tidbit is get everybody, all stakeholders involved, get everybody at the table and have everybody in the audience attend. So all these, again, I'm going to say all these meetings that are coming up in January for anybody to come, you need to be yourselves like you are tonight, show up, try to get your neighbors to show up. And I commend the select board for listening to the public. I think this is great that you're listening to the public because we are serving you. And that's the name of the game. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Patty. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so bring it back to the board. What do we want to do? I sense that the oral language is gone, so I think that answers that question. It seems to be answered, and I think the debate centers now around whether to require completion of transition to the DRB within 1 year, 18 months, or 2 years, which has all been discussed here.
Well, I had a new light shined on me thanks to the public, because in the case that the say they do adopt in July, say they don't, and it's next July, we have the possibility of it being 1 year, we have the possibility of it being 2 years. I would feel, I think, if I had to put my best foot forward on it, I would say the end of 24, because that doesn't force us into a year. It doesn't force us into waiting 2 years. It gives us, if it's adopted, it gives us the reasonable amount of time to, accept within the year of his. That gives us also on a planning side of things too, because as 24 wraps up, we have the holidays and people aren't as busy. Water projects aren't happening in the winter. Gives us some time to adjust, set up the board, get a fresh start on the first of the year, and move forward with it in the year of 25. So those are just my thoughts, and I am more than willing to compromise or think outside the box with anyone.
So, point of clarification for me, you're talking a date explicit of end of 24, regardless of when it's approved, or you're talking
Well,
18
if
months
it's
from when
if it's
approved?
you know if it's the
It's a
whole
shorter-
extra year to
it's a
plan
shorter
for
window.
it,
Well,
6
you know
months.
what I mean? Let's wait 2 years after passage and the town plan's finished, and hopefully by 26 or 27 we have a DRB.
yeah, I'm not proposing.
The language that's written in there, unless you wanted to go 18 months from passage, but
That's what I'm proposing.
I just feel
That's
like
what 18 months from.
that's July 25 if it's not passed until next session.
But the select board can make it a priority to have it happen sooner. This is just a requirement. Charter. I mean, and then there's the whole implications. If you don't make it, what's the penalty?
Right.
You can sue us, I guess, for violating our charter. But I mean, that's. So anyway, I don't know. Tracy or Don, that's 12 months or 15. We don't have to agree.
I'm fine with 12 months. I'm fine with 18 months.
Can't
Understanding.
hear you.
I'm fine with 12 months. I'm fine with 18 months, understanding that Greg is going to go and next meeting, it may move from 12 months to 18 months. It may move from 18 to 12. It gives us a starting point for discussions, but I don't think that whatever we say tonight is engraved in.
After passage,
We're approving this tonight, right?
what we are approving is language that will go to the public hearings.
Okay. And we need to include the change in the organization in the motion,
Change in the organization, I mean.
the deletion in the organization. Originally, the motion was passed for organization of the charter just to move things, but it was presented tonight with a deletion, which becomes a change. Does that need to be included in the motion for us to adopt tonight?
So, Greg, do we need motions tonight, or do we need a consensus? I think we probably do need a motion.
Yeah, I think the language was in the memo. It's you have to say something about the adopting the language or approving the language. Adopt an official copy of the proposed charter amendments is what you're going to have to do. This is language for a motion.
Okay, and since this is essentially 5 questions, do we need to have a motion for each question?
No, I think that's going to come once you make a motion to put each of these things on the ballot. Yeah. Right now, you're just making a motion to adopt the official copy of the proposed charter amendments as included in the packet and as amended tonight.
So right, the language we could use is
It has been read to the public, so it could be the motion as read to the public, and I can
as
email
amended,
immediately
as
to
amended
you
in the
and
meeting.
Greg.
As amended in the meeting.
Yep.
That's the last one, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other comment on that? Then let's. Anybody ready to make a motion?
I don't see anything written out, but I can try and pull it off.
You want me to go for it?
So, I make the motion that the select board will adopt an official copy of proposed charter amendments as presented with the amendments made in the meeting to section 117-206 appointments by select board.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. Whatever you think you need. Okay. Any other discussion? So this is, so then do we next have to warn the public hearings?
They've already been warned.
They've already been warned.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 4-0. Thank you so much. A lot of heavy lift there. Cool. All right. Move on to the next agenda item. Consider authorizing select board chair to sign letter to Essex Rescue. Greg, on that?
Yeah, so as you know, through the budget process, Essex Rescue has requested a per capita amount of $18 per capita for fiscal year 24. That's a 65% increase up from the past fiscal year. We were expecting something on the order of a 25% increase from them. There's also a big increase the previous year. This would affect all the municipalities within Essex Rescue's service area. That's the town of Essex, city of Essex Junction, town of Underhill, and portions of Jericho and Westford. We've all had similar concerns. No complaints about the service. Service from Essex Rescue is great. Just some concerns about the rate of increase in the costs. Ethan and I met with some the managers and some council select board officials of the other communities. We drafted up a letter looking for some additional, I guess, feedback and contributions to Essex Rescue. Those are laid out in the letter. Asking that Essex Rescue provide quarterly financial reports. Asking that each member municipality have an option to place a voting member on the board of directors. Asking for an independent financial audit and asking for an independent operational assessment. Just to try to have a little bit more insight and influence going forward to hopefully avoid such large increases going forward. We don't think that is going to be the case. I mean, from what Essex Rescue has told us, this is getting them to the point of being stable financially, being operationally stable. But just after 2 years of large increases, we wanted to have some more conversation and some more input because it is something that is scary as we go forward. If we keep seeing increases like that at a certain point, we will not be able to absorb those. So that's the information in the packet. Ethan, you've been part of the conversations. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I just wanted to reiterate that, everything that I heard from all the other municipalities was that everybody is more than grateful for Essex Rescue, and the community in general is a huge supporter, and by no means is this a shot at Essex Rescue or any discredit to your guys' service. It's just concerns that were shared across communities, and we do really appreciate you guys' service. So,
and forgot to mention, Essex Rescue does have some representatives here who might be willing to speak to this. All 5 of the towns, as we met, we really want this to be a collaborative relationship. We want to continue that relationship. We want to work together and just want to have this as part of that conversation, the next step forward.
Any board member comments?
I would just recommend to change the date on your letter. I think it says 2022.
Good catch.
Sorry.
Representatives from Essex Rescue, do you want to make any comments? Come on up and introduce yourselves.
Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. I will say first,
We have to introduce ourselves.
oh, sorry. Colleen Ballard, Executive Director with Essex Rescue.
Peter Matolo, President, Board of Directors, Essex Rescue.
It was a little shocking to hear that there was a letter put together and collaboration that was outside of any communication with myself or our board. I appreciated a heads up from the town of Underhill that this was coming my direction. For full transparency, there was a member of this select board that was invited to join our board. They were emailed. They didn't show. They didn't write back. And then to receive a letter where they participated in this was concerning. We're here to collaborate together, and this doesn't really feel like collaboration. We have been completely open to any sort of audit, financially, operationally. Financially, it's not in our budget to do so. We're happy to do it at the expense of the towns if that's what you would like. We are not obligated legally to do that. Happy to do what you need to feel like we are being fully transparent with you. That's not the issue, but funding is an issue, and that's why we're in the predicament that we're.
Yeah, and I think to follow on with what Colleen was saying a little bit, I've been a member of Essex Rescue for a number of years, been before the select boards of all the towns a number of times. I think during each one of those representative meetings have asked and solicited for feedback and inclusion in our community advisory board. I think the attempt at collaboration and transparency is not meeting the expectation from either side. So I would hope that if there are more deliberations about what makes for a good working relationship between us, that we would be included in that. There are some things in that letter request that, once it's sent and reviewed by our organization more thoroughly, we can come back to you, but that presents another cycle of deliberation and coming back with feedback from what you're asking of us. And I think, as Colleen, referred to here, totally open to the idea of an audit of our operational policies and procedures, of our accounting books. But I think one of the biggest questions has got to be to what end, because an audit is going to usually expose something that you're looking for in terms of either malfeasance or misappropriation. And if it's transparency that you're looking for, then that's a spot at the table with us as we review our own internal procedures and organizational workforce, which we did come to you earlier this year and describe the radical changes that we've taken on. So, as we've said, open to those requests, but that is going to sit outside of our operational budget and where we have finances for. So if that's something that you're looking to ask of us, it's going to come at the expense of the towns, and happy to participate in that dialogue about the value of that and what we might be able to attain as far as a working relationship without those pieces in place, because audits are one way to get to a destination, but not the only way.
Ethan.
Can I just ask a question? Which select board member was invited to a meeting that they didn't attend?
So Ethan, it wasn't an invitation to the meeting per se, but it was when you sent the email back to me and I responded with, any questions, comments, please let me know. We're getting the community advisory board back together, and
we don't have a formal
start
date
you guys
set up.
I'm sorry?
But it says we don't have a formal start date set up for that group yet. So in the meantime,
because you're the only ones who have responded with any.
Right. And I emailed you to begin with.
You did.
Right.
Yeah. And that was.
I just wanted to clarify all that because I thought I might have missed something. I searched both your names. By any means, if I was if I can be invited to a board meeting, if there's a meeting that I don't know the times, things like that, I will more than gladly be a part of it and show up.
And that's
but
great to know.
Clarify
I think the value of having you guys participate with us is clear. A community advisory board isn't a community advisory board when there's only one community member on it. So the solicitation with you was a back and forth of, hey, until we get that going, we're open to any questions, any information you need. And I think that's what felt disingenuous about the letter coming from the 5 towns collectively when we didn't know anything about that yet. We're just looking for open candor between us, and that'll go a long way to quelling some of these questions about like where are the gaps.
Any other comments, questions?
Any other questions for us?
So by law, you don't have to have an audit done at all?
No. And for full transparency, again, we have an external accounting firm that handles all of our books as well as our tax filings and corporate filings. So for a number of years, they were handled internally by organizational personnel. And we never suspected malfeasance then, and we don't now either. But we do have that added layer of protection with an external account.
All right, sure. Thank you. Comments from the public? Betsy. I was for some reason blanking. I'm sorry.
I've looked into this. It was staggering when I saw the differences in the pricing that was happening, and I looked into what was going on it. So apparently, and Colleen, I don't know.
Address your remarks to the board.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. That they used to have students that their volunteerism is really lowered, which puts a strain on them. And they used to have a program out of UVM, my understanding is, where pre-med students would come and they would volunteer and do their hours working with the EMS. And that would be really good to get back. Why it's lost, I'm not sure. But there's also a system of when they go out on a call and it's a lift assist, person who's down and can't get up on their own, and they need help. They go out, but they're not reimbursed by that, by insurance or by Medicare. And we know how poor those reimbursements are, if they even gave them any. So I'm wondering if there aren't grants that are available for them that they could look into and get some actual money that way. And with the mutual aid system that we have between Colchester and the surrounding towns, when they come into Essex and take care of a call, because we're out on a lift assist, we don't get paid, but they get to take the money that they're using for our people and not get. So we need the mutual assist as well. But we do need to do something about that. Maybe someone else should be going out doing the lift assists. But I know that when you get there, it could be something totally different than just the lift assist. So that's why they're there. Only if they go to the hospital do they get the monies and everything. So I was thinking those things, and also there is a different system that's out there, and I don't know if we need to look at it, because it sounds like Colleen and team is really wanting to be reactive and involved with our board. But you know, Burlington has EMTs that are folded into their fire department. Maybe that's a direction to go. But what the person who I was talking about is, but do the EMS personnel have to participate in the fire if there's not a person who's ill that they're supposed to be there to take care of if they're folded into the department? That's what they didn't know. And but if we don't have currently that I'm aware of database of how many lift assists they do in a year and how much time that takes away, because on the day shift they only have 2
Yeah, I think
trucks going out.
that's been shared with us.
You have it for a year? That's good.
I believe,
But
yeah, we've seen that.
they only have 2 EMS trucks that are going out during the day shifts because they have 4 people on and 2 for each one. But on the evening shift, there's only 3 to 4 people there. If there's 3, you're only getting 1 truck that's going out at all. So we need to get better reimbursement for their time. And
Yeah, that's out
maybe
of our,
we can
that's
help
out of
with
our
that.
control. So yeah, we need to talk to the state for that. Yeah.
On the community.
Any other comments? Patty Davis?
I'm listening carefully, and what I'm learning just from this whole conversation is, again, I keep repeating, all stakeholders have to be involved before even our select board makes final decisions. I think everybody needs to be at the table from now on. Because, and one other little tidbit about the rescue, it's just a little fact, 1/4 of the Vermont population in 3 years will be over age 65. And think about it, how large our population of Essex is. So that is a priority, and it should be taken seriously with all everybody at the table included, and the communication needs to be better. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. Any other comments?
My name is Will Moran. I serve as the Emergency Medical Services Chief at the Vermont Department of Health. And I think the perspective I can provide tonight is I, on a daily basis, work with folks from across the state. I see EMS systems from a regional standpoint that are private not-for-profits, private for-profits, fire-based, and municipal-based. And what I can give you tonight is a little bit of sort of the state's perspective on what's happening in the evolution of our EMS system. You know, EMS, when we think about it today as compared to 20 years ago, looks dramatically different. The level of professionalism that is expected from the public, the level of profession that's expected from our healthcare partners has changed dramatically. You know, for someone to become an EMT is 140 hours of training. For someone to become a paramedic is upwards of 1,500, and that's just enough to get you in the door. So when we think about our pre-hospital care providers today, we're really thinking about those folks who have chosen to make this a profession. And as we think about the evolution of EMS and the level of the extension of the emergency department that EMS is out into the community, that comes at an increasing cost that I think many communities today are facing the reality of. You know, one of the things I can say about Essex Rescue is because we do keep an eye, we don't track the data explicitly, but we keep an eye or keep an ear to the ground as far as what's happening for per capita requests when we look at the funding model that EMS primarily relies upon today to support operations. Is that the funding model today on a per capita rate ranges between, you know, $1 per capita to upwards of 60. And I heard a recent proposal that was over 110. So when we think about where Essex Rescue has been historically and where they're proposing they go, you're still very much in the bottom third from a state's perspective on the per capita funding rate. What I would really consider you to think about is what you're getting for that. You know, Essex Rescue has been a leader in paramedic level care for more than 10 years. They're folks on their team not only are leaders within their community, their EMS community, they're leaders within our state community, and they have many folks historically that have sat on national commissions and really driven the evolution of EMS on a national basis, and we have all benefited from that. So, you know, when I think about the challenges that EMS faces today, I think regional system reform is one of the issues that comes up time and time again. Just a few weeks ago, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns entertained and hosted a forum, and they invited EMS service chiefs from across the state to attend, and the state attended as well. And system reform, funding reform, was one of the main issues that was highlighted by many of the services that participated. When we think about the way that EMS is funded today, it comes from really three principal places, right? We have reimbursements that are provided by the insurance companies or our government-based healthcare entities such as CMS, so Medicare and Medicaid. Then we have private donations. You know, we have not seen an increase in our increases as far as reimbursements for services rendered, right? And that services rendered is really just the call, right? So when someone calls 911 and the ambulance responds and the insurance company pays $560 for that, even though the ambulance service spent $1,000 to provide that high level of care, that reimbursement addresses that single moment, right? So that 50 minutes of the ambulance was on the road and the crews were providing care. It doesn't address the cost of readiness. And so we know that ambulance services rely heavily upon municipal subsidies to support the operation because you can't support it off of reimbursements alone. What I think many communities across Vermont, because Vermont has historically been a predominantly volunteer system, which allows the cost to remain low, what we've seen is that as our number of volunteers has continued to decrease, there's been a greater reliance upon more and more paid positions to meet the community's needs. Essex Rescue responded to 3,044 requests for service last year across the communities that they serve. Substantial. And it takes a tremendous amount of money to support that operation. You know, this conversation is being had in many communities across the state. I think folks are looking for a cost, both an economical solution, but also matching a solution with what the community is capable of providing as far as financial support. So I think when you think about in the long term about what the right solution is for your community, I would urge you to participate, with the invitation of Essex Rescue and with sounds like what is the ask of communities, is to get involved in the organization and hear from the organization and learn about the organization. I can tell you that the private not-for-profit services that I see that are the most successful when it comes to community engagement and communication are those folks that do have community active participation on their boards of directors. Because I think it oftentimes will help avoid situations like this where, Essex Rescue's staffing model, which was very successful for many, many decades, right? For probably 40 years, they were very successful in keeping their costs substantially low by predominantly, working off of a volunteer model. We know EMS is changing. We know the evolution of EMS has put us on a trajectory where you will see more and more paid positions. The EMS workforce, and this was detailed in a report created by the American Ambulance Association earlier in the last part of last year, identified that the EMS workforce, 20 to 36% of the workforce turns over every year. So potentially every 4 years, you turn over the entire EMS workforce. So when we're looking for opportunities to retain really high quality EMS practitioners, that comes with knowing that you can have a reasonably paying job that allows you to have a roof over your head and food on your table. So, when you think about the support that you're looking to offer Essex Rescue, I would urge, for you to take those things into consideration and to think about, what is it that your community expects when they pick up the ambulance or when they pick up the phone to call for an ambulance? Because it isn't a guaranteed thing. It's not guaranteed. And when we rely upon non-municipal entities to provide that service, it does take a public and private partnership to make that possible so that the community can expect very high level quality of care when they do call 911. If there's anything I can do to leverage the resources of my office, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm happy to assist in any way I can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that comment. I don't think we're talking about not funding Essex Rescue. To be clear there. Our major concern is, as Greg said at the beginning, is that last year we had a substantial increase, and I understand completely that was in order to stand up an additional ambulance. And we were told last year what to expect this year, and what we got was significantly different. And that's really the source of our concern, is that what we were told last year was that it wasn't going to be as big of an increase as what you've asked for. So that's I think that we're just looking for a way to understand better. Also have to have and I agree with what was just said. If we'd have someone on your board, and I understand that the advisory board has not been reestablished yet. I think that would absolutely help, because we could have much more communication back and forth. The other thing is, I don't know how we, other than that, how we can have a better rapport, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Anybody else have any other comments they want to make here? I guess what we're being asked, what we've had some discussions, in executive session about what to do around this, and we've posed this letter's been posed. It's the consideration whether we want to sign it. I see a hand up here.
I was just wondering, why can't we get a committee together where you would also have volunteers from the community to talk about this whole issue? Because Essex Rescue is something that's very important to all of us. And I think if we had some kind of committee where we could work with them, it would be a good thing. I thought that somehow we were talking about having a public service or a public safety commission, but that's kind of gone by the board. Maybe that would have been something that we could have worked in. But I just think if we can make this a community issue where we can all kind of work together, take the time, people that want to be on the board or volunteer, whatever, that it might be helpful. That's all.
Thanks, Mary. I think that's part of the intent. We don't want to force a committee on them by appointing our own committee. to talk to them. I think the intent is for them to establish a committee that then they could
Well,
invite
yeah, I
folks
just
to
feel like there's this sense of polarization, which I don't think anybody intends.
Right,
but I feel it.
right.
And so I'd really like it if we could just say, hey, we don't feel, you know, that's not the intent here. We'd like to find a way to make this work for everybody.
Yep. Ethan.
I just wanted to add a couple comments because this is really difficult for all of us, and especially myself being the representative and a select board member. And one of the things that I hear from the community members and from Essex Rescue and from us at the select board here, and the hardest part about this whole relationship and Essex Rescue in a whole is it's not just what I think. It's not what the Essex Select Board thinks. There's 5 communities that if one of these communities says, I'm not paying this year, then all of a sudden, you know, there's 4 other communities that have to figure out, well, can we raise up to 20 to continue to fund it? You know, we don't, in no means do we want to underfund Essex Rescue or lose Essex Rescue. But we may have a concern, one concern, and let's just take the list for example. I'm not saying one was one way or the other, but there's 5 concerns here. So let's just, for example, maybe one came from each community. So it's so hard to take them all together and say, well, we can help in Essex's side and bring more members of our community together to help because there's thoughts from Underhill and there's thoughts from Westford and Jericho. And that was really one of the main focus points in our conversation. And I apologize for not reaching out before because it was such I couldn't speak for everybody else. I had a couple concerns of my own, but it was not the whole picture. And that is still the hardest task that we have here at hand. And that was kind of the thing when this letter was thought of and brought out was, which one of us 5 communities is going to give Colleen a heads up? Are we all going to call Colleen and say, hey, we wrote this letter, we take an initiative here, and can somebody from this municipality think about these things? So as we move forward, I mean, it's going to be hard to involve all of the community, and I totally agree that's the most important aspect. But I just wanted to throw it out there again that we have. It's not just us, it's 5 other communities, and we all have to agree, really, because we have to support Essex Rescue, and all 5 of our communities have to support Essex Rescue, and we have to have a plan forward where we can all do that. And that's going to be the challenge, but I think it's achievable. And, this was just let's say a starting point of continuing and building and cherishing the relationship that we do have. And that was brought up many times. I think Greg can attest for me too, is in no means was this ever meant to be malicious against Essex Rescue. It was just meant to be, can we help? Is there a way for us to lend assistance in any of these ways, or, create something that's more than what we have now? So just wanted to share those thoughts with everybody.
Yeah, you want to respond? Go ahead. Yeah.
So, Peter Martolo, President Essex Rescue. So, look, I think getting the towns together has always been a balancing act of like how much information is needed, wanted, expected. I also want to make it clear that what we're trying to do is help inform and get the context across, because this isn't about responding to what does Underhill need, what does Essex need, what does Westford need. We all need the same thing. Need ambulance service 24/7, and that's what we are here to provide. The challenge that we're facing is getting you the right context to understand that, as Will was alluding to, there are several factors that are coming to bear over maybe a period of time that we could have seen it earlier, but now we're seeing it right at this point that are affecting the decisions that we're making and the money that we're asking for. It's certainly an open book to figure out if there are other options that are going to help us do this better. That's always a conversation that we're open to. But the main point that we're trying to get across to you and the other 4 towns is the context for how we got where we are. so that there's no misunderstanding when this goes before the budget committee, that there's no real other option. We didn't come to you with $18 per capita because that's what feels right. And I understand the frustration that there was a different story at a different time. Believe me, that doesn't make me feel good either. But the reasons for why we got there and why we're here now are pretty straightforward, and we can track back to help you understand the context of where we are and what the potential future might look like. So I would ask for more openness and candor and less demands of like audits and expectations about organizational representation, because we can answer most of these questions in a discussion. As I said before, if what's going to make the relationship feel strong is an independent audit, we'll do that. But there's not any money in our operational budget to do that. So that'll also be a conversation about how does that come about and how do we justify the need for that. I'd like to exhaust all the other opportunities first for getting you guys the context and understanding so that it's clear that while $18 is a jump, it's still the lowest price that you're going to get for ambulance service.
Neither. Tracy.
I would just like to reiterate what I said when you were here in front of us for the request. This is not meant to be adversarial.
Mm-hmm.
This is meant to be a conversation. I would never, this is not a judgment or calling into question the value that Essex Rescue provides to this community. I don't think anyone would make that statement. However, I think it's important to note that this is coming from a place, at least from my perspective, that we feel as though we are doing our due diligence as the fiduciary body of this municipality. So I just want to make sure that that comes across, that this is not a judgment call. This is not questioning your value. This is not meant to be adversarial. It is not an easy conversation. It's not particularly comfortable to be in this position. I'm sure it's not comfortable to be in your position right now. But I just want to make sure that I do voice that and that is understood.
Totally, and I appreciate you expanding on that a little bit. For complete candor, I'm outside of the clinical role at Essex Rescue now, so my role is a fiduciary for that organization as well. And as a member of one of the towns that we serve, that's my point back to you guys about before we for audits and organizational reviews. Let's have the conversations. Maybe we can get to that level of due diligence without engaging those other resources. So before we put a demand or a request out in a letter that says, please do these things in order to get these things, conversation might be able to get us to a point of understanding without spending that money and time. Because that's also not just like they're waiting in the wings, they're going to come in tomorrow and do this stuff. That's a long runway to get some of those things done, and we're all busy doing things like keeping the ambulance out there. So I don't take it defensively, but I do just want to make sure that we're working openly and collaboratively, and that is going to require some more of these difficult conversations, but I think it will get us past the point of making assumptions about what we feel we need before we've actually exhausted some other opportunities.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Dan, did you want to comment?
Hello, good evening. I'm Dan Roy. I'm the finance director here at the town. Started
They're
here.
having a hard time hearing you, I think.
Sorry. I'm Dan Roy. I'm the finance director. Been here at Essex for 4 months. I'd like to reiterate what Tracy and Ethan have already said, that no one's ever had a disparaging word to say about the services provided by Essex Rescue. I would like to clarify that the purpose of an audit is not to find fraud or misspent funds or anything of that nature. Fraud is financial audit is simply to prove that the numbers are justifiable, just accurate, and a true representation of the functions of an organization. So the purpose of an audit is not for a fraud, and I unfortunately feel that it's too bad that that kind of word has been tossed around, because no one's ever accused of anyone of that. So I feel it's a little bit of an excessive leap to say, an audit is going to try and find a fraud thing. Having been here for 4 months and presented you as a board with a 22% tax increase and gone through the process of you asking questions and the community asking questions about it, that's the correlation that should be made here. Like, we are just simply looking for justification of the increases that we're seeing, that we're exhibiting. We're not denigrating the services, and we're not saying we'll never do it. I think it's just feel like it's looking for answers, just like the community is with our current budget situation. So I just wanted to throw that in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Anybody else? Greg, anything? So, see if there's any hands up. What do we want to do?
I make the motion that we send the letter with the understanding that we're open for further discussion.
He signs the letter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With the
Clarify that
understand,
word.
right? I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I don't have it in front of me, so that we grant permission for the chair to sign with the understanding that we are open for further discussion with Essex Rescue.
John, do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion. I do have a question, and it's inappropriate for me to ask.
You may ask.
The Essex Rescue. Do you guys plan to attend the next board meetings for, I think Westford is next, and then Underhill and Jericho? Do you plan on attending those meetings with this same letter?
So full disclosure, like, we just found out about this letter yesterday and the meeting for you guys today. So as soon as we get information about the other select board meetings, we will plan to attend and discuss this with them as well. This is wasn't a long runway to figuring out how to respond to it. So yeah, it's been pretty much just we don't have a clear view into who's meeting next. If you guys had been the first, it was just by happenstance that's when we heard about it.
Just wanted to share my concern for the reasoning of the question. And I'm sorry if I am out of line with any of the other board members, but being a part of this, I read it, had the opportunity to make changes, but I was also in the meeting with all the other people, and there's some points that were made that were very clear, and people, we went back and forth many times, but what if one board wants to change one thing? You know what I mean? After hearing from their public, this hasn't been a public discussion until the meeting is presented to the public.
Then it's no longer a joint letter.
Agreed.
Right, they would send
So
their own letter.
I just, one of my largest points in the whole time was not to be demanding in the letter, and it's just I have a hard time seeing this going through 5 communities and not getting the backlash. We need to get a microphone for the room again. Those are my thoughts.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.
Says any others?
Any other thoughts? Tracy?
I have questions around will recommend including the full Essex Rescue request. We've already done that. It is already in our budget, correct?
It's in there now. You haven't finalized the budget yet, and part of staff's recommendation is that we do fund the full amount after this conversation tonight. And I can opine for a moment that I think it's going to partially answer your question too. This is part of the challenge that Ethan was referring to about we're 5 communities that are all customers, and it's if one of us says we're going to fund it at $15 an hour, and another one says 8 per capita, another one says $18 per capita, another one says $12 per capita. How do we do that? So we're trying to come at this with all 5 communities on the same page, and this is what the representatives from all 5 communities had agreed to.
My follow-up to that is on the following conditions, we ask. So that doesn't tell me that funding is contingent upon these items happening and being funded by Essex Rescue. It just means the entertaining of our ask.
I think that's fair, and I think if that's part of the conversation that further discussion that Don was referencing, and I think it's also
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what the future's going to bring,
Right.
and we don't know what other options are. We want it to be Essex Rescue.
Mhm.
Hopefully, this will give some of the assurances that everyone's talked about.
Right. So, to be clear, what we're voting on is whether to have the select board chair sign the letter for the town of Essex, with the proviso that we continue discussions with Essex Rescue, and the way the memo is written, it says that we ask for those things. The intent is, as is stated in the letter, that we would fully fund them. It's later in our agenda that we're hopefully going to finalize the budget. So that is the request. Any other discussion?
So just excuse me, a process question, but I'm just throwing this out there. But it says a community doesn't sign. What is the step? What is the step there after that? There's no, you know what I mean? I'm just asking for clarification for us and the public.
I don't think that's, I don't know that that's our problem.
Okay.
Right. It would be
The
between
community
Essex Rescue and the community that doesn't participate.
Unless another community says, no, we're not going to fund you, or they're going to fund you something else, and in which case then I don't know what, if we've already approved our budget, then it becomes problematic for.
Right.
Right. So the way the letter is written, the all 5 communities, at least the representatives to the group that put that letter together, agreed that they would fully support the funding, but can't guarantee that that's going to happen. You're right. If somebody chooses not to fund, then there's discussion Essex Rescue is going to have them and with us. All right. Any further discussion? Anything else? Okay, then move to the vote. All those in favor, motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Again, we are going to discuss our budget later tonight. Our intent, our discussion at this point has been to fully approve the number that you've requested, and like to continue dialogue with you. Thank you for your participation tonight, and all of you. Right. Okay, let's move on to business item 5C. Consider approval of fiscal year 2022 fund balance assignments. Greg or Dan?
That's going to be Dan, for the most part.
Hello, good evening again.
We may need to shift
Yeah.
over.
Which is
I don't, if it's a,
awkward for another
yeah,
meeting.
can we close the door on a
Charlie, can you just crack it
meeting?
a tiny bit?
This one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that
It's
kind
an
of
open
sends a,
meeting. We don't want to imply that it's not. Yeah.
sorry.
So Dan, fund balance assignments.
Yes. So currently, we have an audit draft in hand that we've had for a couple weeks. Our current general fund balance as of the end of fiscal year 2022, June 30th, 22, is a little over 6.6 million, 6.65 million. In terms of our mandatory unassigned fund balance, we have to take 15% of our current fiscal year 23 operating budget, which is 16.675 million. So that's a $2.5 million unassigned fund balance. That's basically our emergency fund, if you will. And so the purpose of this tonight is to give you information on the 2.5 million, beyond the 2.5 million for further assignments by the board. What we've proposed is there's a $740,000 balance that's available for you to consider assigning. What we are suggesting is that $540,000 be assigned for future tax relief and $200,000 be set aside for capital projects, especially in light of losing 41% of our tax base and losing about $200,000 to $210,000 from the fiscal year 24 capital budget because of our tax base reduction. There are a couple other elements. One is for fire equipment that was ordered in fiscal year 22, but was not delivered by the June 30th fiscal year end. So by accounting rules, those things get expensed in fiscal year 23. Those amounted to $46,728. And then the final element for your consideration for the memo is $4,800 set aside for health and wellness, which is funding already set aside in the fiscal year 22 budget that was unutilized by staff members. We're just looking to utilize it for future use within health and wellness initiatives. So those are the four main areas that we're looking for your consideration and approval for that unassigned fund balance.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any select board member comments, questions? Ethan, go ahead.
Just picking on you. I'm sorry if I'm loud now. I was just curious about the assign for merger related costs. Is that 90,000 included in the tax reduction as listed in the memo for that 540?
So that 90,000 is not within the 540. Are you looking at the spreadsheet?
It could be 600. I'm sorry if I confused it. So yeah, I'm looking in the
You're
table.
looking at FY22, Ethan.
Right, but it wasn't used. So there's 92,000.
So
90,661 that.
Yeah, the 90,661 was set aside previously by the select board.
Right.
So that is not included in the 740,000 for consideration tonight. 540 for possibly future tax reduction. So if you look at the spreadsheet in the packet, I kind of shaded three things in blue kind of together. One is
I don't have any shading, but okay.
Sorry, maybe it's not.
I'll pull it up on the screen.
But it's the 90,661, which Ethan's referenced.
I see it.
The 103,000 for personnel costs, which was another previously approved select board item, which was previously 200,000. And then the assigned for future tax reduction, 596,733.
Oh, that's that sideways.
So that's the total. I'm sorry, but that's the total for the balance to assign 740,084.93.
No, those three elements are outside of the 740,000 in consideration for tonight.
Okay. Do you have I guess I could do it on a calculator, but do you have a total for the unassigned?
So I'll expand on a little bit. So the three items we just spoke about total 790,000, which are basically fiscal year 21 or earlier assignments that have just been carried forward and somewhat utilized since that time. The potential to take 740,000 is kind of on your table to assign. 540, which could be joining this group as future tax reduction related items, and then $200,000 could be set aside for the capital fund to replace that gap, which I just spoke about. So really, there's 1.33 million that could put, if you accept our proposal, there would be 1.33 million set aside for future tax reduction, of which 600,000 is already being used in the fiscal year 24 budget, which you've been presented with.
Okay. And just a clarification for me, we're still at 22%.
We are still at 22%.
We're roughly still 100,000 per percentage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I raised the question, I've raised it before in past years about the economic development, $9,713. It's been out there for years, and I understand that there's a restriction on it from 2015.
Oh, before that.
Before that.
That's when I last saw it.
So my question then is why it's not in the restricted category, so we don't. The implication then is that it's not available to be reassigned. You know, you have different types here. You've got non-spendable, you've got restricted, then you have assigned, and you've got that. And it's always been my understanding that if once something's assigned, the select board can always choose to reassign it somewhere else unless it's restricted. So if there are restrictions on that, I know it's a small amount of money, but it's just always. I raise this question every year, and you finally told me today that it has caveats on how it's spent.
Yeah, that's fair to say. If it's an externally proposed item, you know, it would need to be a restricted balance. Like the item that we have in there is our reappraisal funds, which is obviously going to go to the reappraisal happening, you know, in the next couple of years. So I don't know the source of the $9,700. So I would need to investigate that to see if it's truly an external.
Yeah,
source.
Dan, I did some research today, and it's I don't know when it came to the town. It was some sort of economic development group or entity that sort of disbanded, gave the town some money, and the select board at the time adopted some restrictions on it. So it's been assigned. It's not. I wouldn't say it's totally restricted, and this is where I'm not an accountant, so I'm not a finance expert, so my understanding of the words may be probably a little bit different and not as accurate as Dan's. There are some caveats and guidelines that Andy referenced around how that money could be spent. I think there's a fair amount of flexibility. You might remember we proposed to use $1,500 or $3,000 in the fiscal year budget for 24 from that, which I think qualifies. It's loosely speaking, it's supposed to be spent towards economic development purposes. We've applied it in the economic development fund in the budget this year, looking to support some of that work. So there's guidelines around it. It's not as restricted as like the reappraisal funds, where it can only be used for this very one specific thing, or clerk's records. So there are some restrictions, but I think we can start to look at how to use that money and spend it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no sense having it sit forever.
Yeah.
Spend it. Get it off the books or reassign it. If we can't reassign it, then let's.
Yeah, I don't think you can reassign it. I think we can do a better job of spending it.
Right. Okay. Right. And then the remainder of the other three items there, and I thought the 103 that's in the assigned for personnel costs, some of that, the 64K is already committed for FY23. Is that?
Yeah, so that's been part of the transition costs to get me into place, and also some of the consulting work that Sarah's done along the way.
Okay, and I see on the spreadsheet that it says for future tax reductions, so I guess the intent there is you would propose that to go into future years, I know there's been a proposal to use 600,000 this year, 400,000 the following year, 200,000 the next year to possibly clear out what's
Yeah.
still hanging around and feather down the use of fund balance for tax relief.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an official plan. Obviously, you only have the 600,000 in front of you, but you know, we do kind of have that vision to phase it in. If
Things can change and we can't commit dollars for future.
Yeah.
Explicitly, right? All right. Anybody have any other comments? One thing that could be entertained is do we think we're using enough this year? Ethan, you got a question?
I think we should use the money, not all the money, but use more money this year. $100,000 is a percentage on the tax increase, and we're really worried about mitigating the impact on our community. I go as far as saying using $1 million this year, but probably won't happen. So I'd say 800,000. But you can't pull the $750,000 for future tax reductions that can be used for anything besides future tax reductions. It can be assigned to anything. This is the taxpayer dollars. They need to be given back. And in my plan, if I have the opportunity to serve on the board again, a 4% increase is more than enough next year to suit this budget that we have. We got $200,000 going back into capital. We don't think that's quite enough. I'd suggest throwing 300 in there. But I wouldn't put it in my pocket and save it for later. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
One thing to remember is that every 100,000 you put in this year for tax relief, you have to make up next year because you're not getting that revenue.
Yeah.
So
if you went with 4%, which would be $400,000, you would have that next year. Doesn't include inflation. You put in, I guess it doesn't. I guess
Be a lot more than that,
That'd be
Ethan.
above more than what the 600,000. My apologies. You're right. That'd be 10%. So, but that would still leave $200,000. Would still leave $530,000. So, not including any future, if there is or isn't future fund balance. So, just thought.
Yeah.
I'm not a math whiz, so I'm really slow in this. How much of this fund balance will we need to use to get the proposed tax increase to 19.9%?
19.9.
So right now we're at 22.04.
Okay.
So 19.9, we're talking 2.1%.
Mm-hmm.
You would call it, I mean, you could call it roughly $200,000 to $220,000.
Okay.
Bring it right to 800.
Sorry, to me, selling 19.9% is we've come under the 20% we thought, and we've done due diligence. And if we've got it, I think now that's just me. Sorry, Greg.
No, just, I mean, to Andy's point, not saying no, don't do it, but just to understand the implications and the causation of what happens. And every dollar you put towards reducing the tax rate this year, you're going to have to make up next year. And then some. So if you're targeting 4% budget increase next year, hypothetically, that's 4%. That's our normal operations. That's everything. And then if you factor in the fact that we need to account for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of fund balance, there's your 4% right there before we even have any budget increases for operating costs, salary increases, benefit increases, gasoline increases, any of that. So just being careful about what you do because you have to make up for it and you pay for it later. Any money you put down now, you pay for it later.
Yeah, reducing the tax rate this year likely increases it for next year.
Right. But if you pay 22% this year, and you're only planning on, well, you'd be 600,000, so 10% next year. If you bring it down to 19, you can stay around 10 again. So max, you'd be 12 on your numbers you just gave, right? On the scenario you just gave, you'd be 12 if you went down to 19. So you could still hold it around 10, 19 this year. Maybe the year after that, you could fight a little harder, you know. Your appraisal coming up, 25. There's a lot of things are going to happen. A lot of things will change. So I think record high inflation. I know a ton of families that are struggling. You know, just something to be considerate of.
Yeah, I mean, you all know this is one of my goals coming into the budget year this year was to get us back to the point of normalcy and stability as quickly as possible. The faster you eat that tax increase, the sooner you can get back to normalcy. So do you want to do a big increase this year and then another pretty big increase next year and then another pretty big increase after that to get to that point of normalcy? Or do you want to absorb as much of it as you can this year? And even with that, that's with the 600%, $600,000 towards fund balance. And as Dan said, we're looking at a plan of feathering that down over the next few years, 400,000, 200,000, phase it out. That's based on the money that we have now, that we know we have. Without promising anything for next year, the way we've been doing the budget, the way we've been accounting, Dan thinks we'll be in a similar type of situation next year. Yeah, no promises. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but cautiously optimistic. If not optimistic's not the right word, but cautiously predicting that we will have some additional fund balance next year to help with that feathering. And so maybe as opposed to a $200,000 difference that you have to make up each year, maybe we can do $150,000 or $100,000, depending on what money we have there to sort of feather out. You also might want to consider, and I don't say this lightly, I been on my mind what one of the speakers said earlier about what the budget means for our lower income residents, our fixed income residents, and it's a lot. $350,000. Sorry, I'm just misspeaking all over the place today. $350 on the average tax bill, which is what we're looking at this year, is a lot of money. To counter that a little bit, we haven't heard from it. We haven't heard from anybody saying that 22% is too high, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but because I never thought I'd see a 22% property tax rate increase. But do you want to get through the public hearings and see what people say and see if you have any more comments and then decide if you want to apply more money towards the fund balance, more fund balance towards the tax rate this year, and see what that brings, and take a cautious hedge your bets that we'll have some more next year to help feather it in and phase it out. But the more you apply this year, the more fund balance you apply to offsetting the tax rate this year, the more you're paying later on, versus just getting it over with.
And I would add to that, Greg, that you're probably more vulnerable to the volatility of inflation and other costs. If you have to mirror your tax rate to follow costs, your tax rate isn't going to be a 4 or 5% increase each year. It could be the 10 one year, could be 15, could be 3. You're going to be following, the true expenditure cycle a little bit more, always kind of chasing that number. This kind of phase-in plan allows us to have a softer landing a little bit sooner. It's a big hit this year. 22% is a lot, but it allows us to have room in the fund balance to plan to try and get to that 4 to 6% range, or to whatever that new normal is going to be. So instead of, taking 1.2 million and doing it all here and being 15% or whatever it might be, next year could be 15% too, and who knows when we ever get out of that cycle of having it be 15%. That's the thinking behind it too.
Yeah, I totally hear it, and I agree with that thinking. I hope I'm wrong when I say this, but in the 4 years that I've paid taxes in Essex, there's never not been a fund balance, and it's never been less than $200,000. So I hate to say that.
So one
but I hope to get away from that.
One thing to consider, or that you got to remember, is that we now have a contract with the City of Essex Junction to provide police services. Unspent police salaries are a big portion of what contributes to our fund balance. We will have to share that back to City of Essex Junction in their contract payments. So we will only get 52% of fund balance generated from unspent police salaries. And so going into the future, our access to or whatever fund balance is going to be diminished by that. And
No.
so we can't count on the same level of fund balance we've had through the years here.
Just to reiterate that, when I said earlier that Dan, looking ahead, thinks that, you know, next year there's a chance we're going to have fund balance again. Fiscal 24 may not. You know, and it may be a lot less than we're used to. And part of that is because we made adjustments to the police. We're budgeting them at 90% as opposed to 100% or the 95% that we've done in the past. So that's going to take away some fund balance right there. You know, the fund balance is largely, and Dan can add to this, but it's a large part of it is personnel and staff openings. And so when we have police that aren't positions that aren't filled, every month that position is open, that's where the fund balance comes from. When we have a community development director, which was this current fiscal year, not the fiscal year 22, but when we don't have a comp dev director for 4 months, that's going to create fund balance. When we don't have an admin person in the recreation department for a few months, that's going to create fund balance. We hope those don't happen. We don't budget for them because we don't know when somebody's going to take a new job, when someone's going to leave, when those openings are going to happen. But those are often the big driver of what creates the fund balance. And there might, if you want to add to any other big drivers. But.
Yeah, I mean that's precise, and you know we've taken out a lot of those buffers, whether it be police or overtime. You know those items have been hit harder in this budget cycle than they would have been in the past. So you know they're just leaner budgets, even though the tax increase is 22%. The budget is leaner than it has been in those regards.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's actually a 7.4% budget reduction, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm just tell you where I'm thinking and I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm usually I have in the past been very much a proponent of give the money back as fast as you can. But the concern I have is that we have 2 years in a row of double-digit increases if we tweak this too much right now, because again, you don't have that revenue source. Not going to have as much fund balance going forward to add back to it. And I guess also in the spirit of our discussion earlier about waiting till we get input from our public hearings, we're going to go with what we've got, and then we can adjust later, because we can reassign fund balance whenever we want, regardless of what these guys say, regardless of what they recommend. That's the reality. They don't like it. We may not like it. They may not advise against it, but we can do that.
So at this time, if we made the motion to go with the fund balance assignments, it could still be changed later on. Is that what you're saying?
It still could be changed before we have to warn the final budget number. Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, in the essence of time, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the fund balance assignments in the amounts that were indicated in the chart provided. Now, do I need to state these amounts for the motion or not?
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. Further discussion? We did not go to public comment. Any public comments? Sorry, I'm going to everybody okay if we go to public comment or we vote on this? See any hands in the room? I don't see any hands online. I do. Lorraine.
Hey, Andy. Thank you guys for the discussion. It's weird because I think the weird thing is just not knowing how the public feels about this vote. They would probably feel about the same way that you guys do. And the lead up to the merger, my expectation was about this amount, which of course was over a 12-year period, but that didn't also incorporate my expectations for, what happened with inflation, plus the healthcare costs, and plus the Essex Rescue Service. So there's other things that impacted that would have been even bigger had we merged too. So from this public member's standpoint, it's just not a surprise to me. So I don't know if that's why other people aren't really weighing in. I have no clue what people think about this budget. For me, it makes sense to rip the Band-Aid at this point. We're done. My big concern is the capital budget in the future for stormwater, because Dennis Letts warned us on that for years and years and years, and it is severely underfunded, and we're already seeing some collapses here. So I just hopefully cautionary tale in terms of risk assessment and throwing good money after bad. I would hate to think also that with that excess of fund balance, that even though it's a big hit this year, that maybe it's an opportunity to also take some of that money toward the capital budget too. Just a thought, because according to Dennis, that storm is coming and we're woefully underprepared. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. So there is a $200,000 transfer included in this in the recommendation to capital.
Yep, I saw that. Yep, just saying that may not be enough, but okay.
We're talking about the capital budget here in a minute.
Yeah.
Really soon. Okay, Patty Davis.
I concur with Lorraine because what I'm hearing from residents is take care of the infrastructure and everything that we have now without thinking of building new ones. We need money in capital for just our increase in population. And people think that this 22% increase is supposed to be paying for that, for the maintenance of what we have. That's why you're not getting a lot of feedback, at least in my neighborhood. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Patty. There, select board member comments. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the recommended fund balance assignments. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. Okay, let's move on to fiscal year general fund balance work session. So
I will share my screen again.
all right.
So I think we have answers for the most part to the remaining questions. Essex Rescue we talked about earlier tonight. Fund balance assignments we just did. Senior van is the one kind of outstanding question. I'd recommend at this point, let's move forward. If Essex Junction decides they want to keep sharing, it's a benefit to the town financially, and we can adjust if and when we get an answer to that. And lastly, a few more personnel changes actually brought the percentage increase down to 22%, just over. That's Travis, our HR director, had filled out a few more updates based on hires. We also realized that we hadn't been allocating some personnel as we were thinking we had. So that's like, for instance, my salary, a chunk of that should be going to the water sewer accounts. We had some in there, but not as much as we thought we did. So made a few allocations like that, which brought us down to that 22%. That's pretty much it for the update, but happy to try to answer questions, and Dan's here as well. If there's anything else that we missed that you're looking to have answered.
Any questions?
I'm happy you got 22%. So yeah. And thank you for all your work, all of you.
All right, so this is just a discussion item. You don't need anything.
What was the
Motions here.
next
Do we
one?
have any public comments? See any hands up? No hands in the room. Okay. Next item is consider adopting fiscal year 2024 municipal budget and warning public hearings.
Do we have a final amount to put in that motion?
That would be what was just up above in that chart. For
Well, that's what I was looking at. I couldn't figure it out. So what did I do?
we don't put it in because in case you had made any changes, that's why.
It's like
kind of leave it blank.
$15,401,152.
All right,
Correct.
wait a minute. 15.
15,401.
401, 152.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Andy, you had reached out to me with some questions earlier about the language of the warning.
Right, yeah, the warning that's in the packet says, this warning for the budget with the increase of, a budget of this amount with an increase of such and such. We actually have a decrease, and I guess if we only warn that we're having a decrease, it sends a very different message than if it also says there's a decrease in the budget, but there's also a 22% tax rate increase. I think we need to include some, if it's allowed.
No, I think it is. I was trying to do some research, and the clerk's office was as well today. I'm pretty sure that a public hearing just needs to identify what the nature of the public hearing is about. So I think there's some flexibility there, as opposed to statute saying it must say exactly this and exactly this language. So I think Andy's right in terms of being clear about what the public hearing is about and what the impact is going to be on the average taxpayer.
So at this time, I make the motion that the select board adopt the fiscal year 2024 general fund budget and warn public hearings for the fiscal year 2024 general fund budget in the amount of $15,401,152 to be held on January 17th and January 30th, 2023.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy, for the second discussion. I assume, right, the wording of the warning is not part of the motion, so you've
Correct.
fixed that.
Clear that up. Yep.
Great. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 4-0. Thank you for that. Now we are moving on to the discussion about proposed fiscal year 2024 capital budget and 5-year plan. You, Aaron? And Dan, too? Ready, Don?
So we didn't make any changes to the capital plan from what you saw last time. Didn't sound like there were any changes desired. So we kind of left it as is. Andy, you had some questions about some of the accounting that's in there and showing of the balances and projects and what money is there. You're right. We need to spend some more time on that this year. Matter of time. What we really focused on was the money that we knew was going to be coming in, which is about that $322,000 that would be raised off the 2 cents on the estimated grand list. That's what we applied. That's what we assigned. Dan, Aaron, Catherine Sonic, and I are now meeting weekly. We have a lot to do that we want to do with the capital budget as far as cleaning it up, clearing out projects that are done, making sure balances are accurate, building out that 5-year plan. Aaron's already started working on what a 8-year replacement schedule would look like for vehicles. Charlie and I have had that conversation as well. Chief Cole in the back. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but as far as what you're seeing today, what you saw a couple weeks ago is really focused on where do those 2 cents go. And that's the quick overview.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I did spend some time taking a look at an 8-year plan, as Greg said, but I think I agree with his thoughts as well. This is not the year to jump into that both feet. I think it's something we work on and refine moving forward. And as for all the assignments of which project line items require the 2 cents, I think those were pretty much hammered out with staff on that. Those are warranted at those locations. Other than that, I don't have much more to present to you folks tonight, other than fielding any questions. Questions regarding any changes that we made, or addressing some of Andy's questions.
My question is going to be kind of the same one from 2 weeks ago. But the $200,000 that is now proposed to be in the unassigned capital,
In the
undesignated
capital,
yeah. Assigning it into undesignated.
is that the same as this $322,000, or are those in 2 separate folders?
So the 322,000, as you can see on kind of page 35 of the packet, it's been parsed out amongst 6 categories or so.
Right.
The undesignated amount is really outside of those categories and could be applied to, like, say if there's more stormwater events, it could be applied to that a particular fund group, if you will. So it's not really saying 200,000 is going directly to stormwater. It could be, you know, as the needs arise, if something a little more dire happens and it rises up the priority list, an undesignated amount could be designated to a particular one of these project types.
I'll just finish up real quick, then I'll let you jump in. But my added, concern that I had at the last meeting, and the reason for making that suggestion was, the amount requested and the amount that was being proposed didn't line up. And I understand that the capital tax has changed now because of the tax levy, or the grand list, I should say, with the capital tax. But I was hoping to use that $200,000 to almost cover the $531,000 that was requested as a bridge year. That way, next year you can have a plan forth and say, okay, we changed vehicles and we changed, a little bit of our planning for stormwater and all these other things. And then there's a solid plan forward where you can say, we only need to ask for, let's just say it's 380 next year, whatever it might be. And if we can get a capital tax increase, then even better. But don't, in my opinion, don't underfund it this year. Pay for those projects that you asked to have funded. Complete them. You're investing in the town. I understand it's going to be unassigned and it can be used for things, but I mean, it's specifically laid out here for certain items, and I'd hate to see it go somewhere else.
Some of those things are being paid from other sources. Like, for instance, the park stuff is coming from impact fees, and so it's not that we're completely unfunding projects that were taken out of that request. Or many of them are funded from different sources, right? So.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. Ethan, to start with your question about the undesignated, if you go to page 42 of the packet at the bottom of the kind of big chart there, we estimate that we're going to have $626,000 of undesignated capital at the end of fiscal year 23. I don't believe that includes the 200,000 we just signed. Right.
Okay.
So bring that up to 826,000.
Page 42, you said?
Page 42 of the PDF. Yep, page 42 of the packet.
Unassigned. I don't see 600. I see 900 and 400.
And it's on the green part, Ethan. All the green pages stuff.
Let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right there. 626.
At the bottom, talks about in years where the total tax raised by the 2 cents has exceeded expectations, excess has been accumulated, and estimated 626.
Okay.
That's an estimate. We don't know what the year's going to bring. Aaron, how much were some of those unexpected stormwater repairs last year?
Small ones, usually around 10, 15. Upwards of 150, 200. It all depends on what happens and where it's located and what are the utilities it affects. And
so that's part of what that money is for those unexpected surprises. Part of it is if we have a great grant opportunity to complete a sidewalk or finish a project, but we don't have the full amount in that capital line, we can dip into the undesignated fund to support that. To answer Andy's questions about fully funding on the projects that are in here, yeah, we did it a number of ways. We're proposing to do it a number of ways. Some of them, like the Parks Garage and some efficiency lighting, we had some money set aside for efficiency purposes, so we're going to apply that towards the garage as opposed to a separate $4,000. We have a bunch of recreation impact fee money, so rather than putting money towards park assets, we can do recreation impact fees this year. Some of the stuff like gravel roads and our highways, we're proposing to dip into this undesignated fund. Again, that's not something that we recommend doing in the long term. For the long run, it's going to become unsustainable. pretty quickly, but to get us through a year, yeah, we can kind of take from different sources to get some projects done to keep a pace for a year or so.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I hear everything that you guys are saying. That was my main concern. Somebody that
Yeah, and it gives the most
highway,
flexibility if you put it in undesignated, then it can go
Where it's needed.
where it needs to go. Yeah.
Okay. I just saw it as we were underfunding highways and stormwater by $81,000. Unless there's revenue that's going to those two things. That's the way it reads on the graph here. So 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think we
Spend
we looked at
just that
using
figure.
undesignated funds for some of those stormwater and highway in particular. We're proposing use of undesignated funds.
Why don't we designate funds? We have them to designate. We have $200,000 extra. We're proposing to designate. I mean, I get it. I know that if something comes up, you guys have the ability to buy or use the money for an emergency or something like that. But like let's just say a piece of equipment, like I forget what the dollar amount is, but you want to be able to spend a certain amount of money over that. But you can tell the people that you're gonna spend 160,000 on highways and 150,000 on stormwater, and that's your plan this year. Then it's like, awesome, we need that. If you say we're gonna put it in the balance, we might do that, but we might use it for something else. Even though we have 626 in there, it just, I don't know. It gets a bit of transparency where I'd like to see where the money goes, but no, it's not that I'm thinking that you guys are doing whatever with it. It's just presentation of here's what we have for money. We elected to give another $200,000 so we can fund our current capital plan that we put forth at the beginning of our Selectboard term. So,
We can. I'm just trying to check and see if we have it shown in here, but if not, we certainly can. You look at starting at page 38. We show one of those columns is fiscal year 23, the estimated balance. Next column to the right is our proposed additions from the capital tax. Next set of columns after that shows where additional money might be coming from. I'm trying to check and see if we have shown some of the undesignated coming out and going into those accounts to make up the difference. If it's not shown, I think that's something we can do. With Dan, and he's nodding. So yeah,
I don't know what that ring
Something's
is.
whining, guys. Thank you.
Our speaker.
Here.
I'll be quiet. Thank you guys. That was exactly what I was thinking. Capital's huge. Don't put a roof on your house, you lose your sheetrock and your insulation. So,
What's up?
Yeah, it says right on there on that page 42 that there's 81,550 transferring out of undesignated funds. And that's essentially the number you're talking about.
So what projects are those going to? You have to find them. It says stormwater 26,000. The total cost is 124.
I don't know.
It says
Somebody
budgeted.
have to suss that out,
Budgeted
but-
total cost. Well, that's what I mean. It's just to me. I mean, I'm a person that loves to read through these things, but I guess the point I was trying to make was to present this, especially in the packet. If you're gonna have it broken down in that original graph where you said this is what we allotted for last year, this is what we've asked, and this is what we're funding. If we're gonna actually fund it with fund balance, capital balance, then just say we're funding it. Don't say we're only gonna fund it the $300,000 when we're proposing to give $200,000. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to put $200,000 into the overall pot.
Yeah, so part of what we have to do with the capital when we present it to the public is we need to show that the capital tax is expected to raise $322,000. Our total capital project list is X number of dollars. We expect to spend Y number of dollars and end up with Z number of dollars. So you're right in that we should show it and we can show it and we do show it, but it's not all shown in that we're we're also talking, we're focusing on where those 2 cents are going.
Right.
Plus, it's open to change in the event of an emergency.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you do me a favor for like 2 seconds and just walk me through on 41, page 41, where it says stormwater construction projects? Because I've been scrolling back and forth trying to keep the head titles with the numbers because they're only at the very top. They're not on each page. Oh, I guess I don't understand how those numbers play out and what I'm looking at. You know what I mean? Is the total of the 1.1 million?
1.1 million is the balance at the end of the year.
Balance at the end of the year. Allotted for stormwater.
Well, this is a little tricky because I think the money goes in there and then it transfers over to other projects, right?
We have 124,000
this year
of that 2 cents going towards stormwater projects.
Okay.
Right, I just scroll up to those headers.
Yeah, that was driving me crazy last night, but I was like, don't say nothing.
See if we can format that better.
It just makes it easier to, you know.
Yeah, then we've got additions between projects that are budgeted. We've got non-capital additions, that's your grants, those types of things. And then kind of that third column from the right is our total additions. So that includes everything, the capital tax, transfers, grants, stuff like that. And then the second from the right column is how much we're going to expecting to spend and how much we expect to have in the account at the end of the year.
So Ethan, are you looking?
So you're planning on spending the? I mean, I guess there's no number that you're planning on spending, right?
We're expecting to have
the way I read it.
See, 26,000
estimated spend FY24.
Yeah, so I think that 26,000. I'm gonna hope Dan and Aaron can confirm this, but that 26,000 would make up coming from undesignated would make up that 124, bring it to 150,000.
Yes,
so that's our fully
what we
funding. That's our
originally-
fully funding of our stormwater.
And do we have an estimated what we're gonna spend?
That's what was assigned
Was
to
150.
stormwater. Anything more than that, I mean, I'm.
Yep. We currently, at the end of this current fiscal year, we expect to have a balance of $975,000.
Okay.
Adding in that 150 is what would bring us to the 1.1 million.
And Ethan, we do have a couple projects that are still in the queue.
Right.
One of them mostly being the LDS Church storm pond conversions.
Right.
We did change the total estimate of the total construction and engineering for that project, total project costs, and that's over 2.1 million at this point. So there's a significant amount of money that we are tied up, and granted, some of that's going to be offset with some grant funding that we have received from a couple sources through VTrans. But moving forward, we are going to be spending a lot of that money and spending a lot of our time on that one particular project. And there's a couple other ones, some of the UPWP projects we have through Regional Planning Commission. We're probably not going to apply for many grants this year through there, just to kind of keep costs at a minimum or have any of that extra money that we would need for our matching funds for those projects down to a minimum this year, to kind of bite the bullet as well. But we are concentrating on cleaning up all the remaining large projects that we do have in the queue.
Okay.
And that's kind of our direction on where we're going. That's where we're focusing all our energy at this point.
It makes a little more sense now. When I was reading it originally, I was like, they're listing all this year's budget and money revenue, but there's no estimated expense. And there's still no. I mean, I understand now that you're gonna do the other projects, but when you look at stormwater construction projects where the money comes in from this year, there's no estimated expense until you scroll all the way down and see that the total estimated expense this year is $235,500.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only thing I was like, when I was looking at the other chart and then I was looking at this, I was like, what are we, I know you got tons of projects going on. I was just like, what are we spending and how is it being spent?
Specifically for the LDS Church, we are actually looking for additional grant funding. Annie is pursuing more opportunities with that. She's actually discussed it with their current grant coordinator through VTrans, and they've kind of advised us to apply for additional funding as well. So we're trying to exhaust all of our sources of revenue where we can kind of keep costs at a minimum or keep the impact to our capital budget at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple more thoughts is that, that this is
Hard to
a
read.
big, huge document, and that's part of what we want to spend over the next
Right.
year, of really making it a bit more concise and easier to read. And then just one parting thought, and it doesn't necessarily apply to stormwater here, but there are years where we don't spend. We're saving up, the water tower and the fort being a good example of we've got to accumulate that money before we can spend it all at once. So there are going to be times where no spending is shown, and that's absolutely intentional.
So my only last question, I promise I'll be quiet, but is there anything you guys plan to do with Sunderland Brook or Indian Brook this year?
With
Along those waterways?
At this for like restoration projects, monitoring, or
It's just listed in there as various locations within the impaired waterways, and it lists those 2 waterways.
we do monitoring, and we have water quality monitoring, but I believe that's most of that comes out of our operational budget.
Okay.
That's
what they have the definition for stormwater projects on.
Yeah, and some of those we won't be pursuing this
Stormwater
year,
control.
but it's a project as a placeholder in our capital plan.
Okay.
Before I make the motion, did you want to go to the public?
Public, any public comments about the capital plan? Let me get to where I can see any hands up online.
At this time, I'd like to make the motion and that the select board warn public hearings for the fiscal year 2024 capital budget and 5-year plan for January 17th and January 30th.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for your work.
Thanks for answering my questions.
No worries.
And now let's see.
Somebody asked me earlier, and I was like, I don't know.
Can I ask Aaron an unbudget related question now? No, that's all right. Who's responsible for the hole by Hannaford that everybody's complaining about? Anybody know?
Yes, it's actually I believe Hannaford's.
Okay.
That's their port.
That's been the talk of the.
We put a call into the Essex and Peter, and they'll probably likely put it into the
Okay.
right hands. Yeah, one of our public works employees hit that with his truck, and
Oof.
it's got a 3/4 ton in almost.
Oh.
I hit it when it first started, and I thought the same thing.
It's getting a little bit ridiculous.
It's just because there's been a lot of comment on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, on to the penultimate business item. Word I learned from John Sonic. Discussion about town meeting votes.
Again, just preparing for town meeting, tried to put in a list of the items that we know are going to be on the warning, whether that's at the town meeting itself or on the ballots for the continuation of town meeting. And also proposing another couple of questions for consideration as far as the increase in the capital tax and moving all town business to Australian ballot. I think the rest of this stuff we talked about. We always do the reports to the officers now that we're going back to an in-person town meeting. With the budget moving to the ballot, we recommend we can treat the town meeting also as an informational town meeting. Statute allows that. So an opportunity to discuss the budget, do a presentation about that. We have the charter amendments that are expected, so there can be discussion about the charter amendments. We typically announce the officers that are up for election. And then if, depending on other votes, there may be other items to discuss or vote on. And then we have done a public to be heard at the end of town meeting the past few years. As for ballot votes, there will be the budget, charter amendments, and election of officers are the ones that we pretty reasonably can plan for. And so it's a question of those last two or any other ideas that you might have.
Time of the meeting.
7:30.
Why so late now?
It's in our
Because it's in
charter.
the charter.
Is it in it's for 7? Okay.
Yep.
7:30 in the afternoon.
Yes.
Well, no, I thought they fixed. Okay. Because I was saying with no more dinner, I mean, I can't. Okay. Never mind.
So there's a couple of questions here posed. One is there's been a suggestion that we find a venue in the town for a town meeting rather than having it at the high school. We have for the past several years had a dinner before a town meeting, and it was always convenient to have it at the high school because the high school supported that. This year they're not able to do that. So and we have not been able to successful to find a caterer to come in to do the work. So we're not going to a community meal before town meeting. So that's I guess where that is. But then the question is, it's been proposed that we have the town meeting at the Essex Experience. It's been quoted to us for about $1,000 to do that. Something that, I guess that's a question that would be helpful to get an answer to. How do folks feel about moving town meeting into the town?
What space?
They've got theaters in there.
It's one theater.
Oh no, they're all over the place in there.
They got 10 different screens.
Yeah.
10 they got 10
Just
different
everybody
screens.
pick a theater.
Oh.
I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, it would be in one of the big theater has a stage too, right? So yeah, I don't know if that's what's been talked.
I don't know the details, but yeah, Tammy's looked into it. Rough estimate, it's about $1,000. I forget which theater it is.
Yeah. So likely plenty of seating, comfortable seats. It's in the town.
Well, what about the middle school? They don't have chairs enough.
It would be a lot more setup. I'm not sure what the audio visual setup is there. There's no auditoriums. We'd have to be pulling out chairs, putting chairs away. Recommend, the high school. We were originally looking at the high school, still are. We're used to that. It's one less thing to try to do differently this year. They have the auditorium set up. We've done the AV there. There's no community dinner. That was one of the reasons we were looking at the high school primarily as well. But since that's not available, that takes away that as an option. The Essex Experience with the theaters having the tape or the chairs set up, stage in place, all those things makes it easier than the middle school per se.
And will they charge the town to use the high school now that they're in the city?
It's the Essex Westford School District still.
Yep.
Am I allowed to cater the thing for free? Chicken and hot dogs and hamburgers. Do it. This is the first town meeting we're gonna have since the town meeting got me involved in caring about politics. And I missed town meeting in Essex. I mean, that was the number one thing that brought me into this. I'm not ready to give up on that, especially not in a movie theater. You know what I mean? I mean, if the high school is off board just because we can't get a meal out of them, I mean...
Oh, no, we can still use the high school.
We can still do it there.
I'd be more than happy to put that together.
We can still have town meeting at the high school.
If I can't do it, I know somebody that will do it for me.
The suggestion to
Maybe
move
we're gonna
it.
show up,
The
you know?
suggestion was to move it was because the high school's in the city.
Right.
And do we want to have our town meeting in the city? That's the question that's been asked.
Okay.
And there's another venue, and right, I don't know whether there's space there to have a meal. And it's going to be beginning of March. It'd be too a little chilly to do it outdoors.
You're right, yeah.
So
We'll be
it's a great suggestion to find somebody to volunteer to cater it, but I don't know that those details will have to be worked out with the owners of the Essex Experience as well. But something that could be looked at. But the primary question is do we want to move it, out of the city? Are we willing to pay around $1,000 to do that? Is it,
the only thing I'm hesitant about is getting charged by the Essex experience. I'd like to know exactly how much it is and where the money is going to come out of. If they're going to
It'll
keep
come out of the select board budget.
right,
'Cause we used to pay for the meal. We had to pay for the meal at the.
right, I agree, but we're paying for a seat, not paying for a meal. So we also give them money throughout the year to host other events, and they create revenue off from it. So I hate to.
We're paying
So-
for a new start for the town.
I know.
So this is for the town of Essex. It's
I
not-
agree.
You know, if you've got
I agree.
if you've got a concern about how business has been performed with that, I don't know that's. You can have that opinion. You
But yeah, I
you
can. I totally agree.
Well, personally, it'd be easier for the seniors to get to the theater because that whole senior area, and they're majority of people that actually come out, we bus them. Town meeting, it'd be easier to bus them to the theater than it is to bring them down here. You can make more trips. I personally think it should be the town of Essex town meeting should be in the town of Essex. That's my
Tracy?
feeling.
I agree.
Ethan. Sounds like you're
No comment.
not in favor of the location. How about,
No
you know,
comment.
Well, Ethan, you've got to say something.
I'd like to see the money come out of the Essex, the what we pay for out of our budget for the whole thing that we did up there all summer. I want to see the money come from,
Oh, the $8,000 we put away.
yeah, we just put in extra money for it this year. There's a perfect $1,000 for it.
It's select board expense.
No, this is,
Yeah,
yeah, we
it's town
have to
meeting
hold the meeting and post.
Well, I
it.
agree, but it shouldn't be at an expense. That's just my sense. I said I'd be quiet. You could
So consensus is that select board would like to have town meeting in the town.
I will talk to Tammy. I'll confirm, try to get her to confirm with the Essex experience that it's available. I believe that that rate is a discounted rate, but I will check on that too. And if we can't do it at the experience for any reason, I will report back.
Just consider the middle school or which would be, it's a different setup and.
Guys, I remember when we sat on bleachers in a
Sure,
gym
sure.
for town meetings. So
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
you're still ahead of the
Be
game.
able to just pull those out at least and then push them back in. Yeah.
Yeah.
be able to recline with a bowl
Easier
of
than
popcorn
chairs.
this year. So
So we do still have a couple members of the public around. Any comments about location of town meeting? From anybody? Ken, you raise your hand.
Experiences. I was at the Essex Experience when they did the Republican primary show there. So it was in the big theater, tons of room. I want to warn you that the audio visual component was dicey. So I'm hoping that we can provide our own, maybe with Channel 17, because what went on there was not good. I'm not committing you, but it was a problem. Although the venue was excellent, it was very big. The little theater that we had for the show and tell that we did, remember the committee show and tell that we did, that little theater? That might be big enough. I don't know. You have to sort of estimate your numbers.
There's only like 30 seats in there. That's
Yeah, I know. It's not small. So the big theater then, so just watch out. Make sure that you plan to provide your own audio visual, or that they're going to provide something that's going to work. That was what I saw when I was there.
Right. Scott, you just reminded me that we need to ask to see if there's something that could be supported by Channel 17 too. So I assume you know, if the location, I don't know. I don't know if you'd have to, and I know you can't answer that question.
It gets involved in this discussion.
Yeah.
We have a meeting coming up next week. I think it's next week.
Next week?
For the
Oh,
John's a
oh,
representative.
right. Okay, Lorraine, I see your hand up.
I definitely support being in the town and not in the city, given that especially it's our first kind of big change. And then I have been to a number of events at the bigger theater, and there's never been an issue with sound. So I'm not sure if that had to do with the people who held the debate and who ran the audio for that, but I would definitely want to know ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Lorraine. Okay. You don't need any kind of vote or anything. It's a consensus question.
I'm good with that. I would like some direction on additional items on the ballot. Do
Oh,
you want
right. We haven't
to
finished the
pursue
question.
those?
Right,
Do you
right,
want to
right.
put them off? Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
You don't need to make a vote tonight, but
Yeah.
some direction would be helpful.
So that was the other two questions on here are, do we want to consider putting the increase in the capital tax on the ballot? Is there a separate discussion here about where the 3.5 cents comes from? It was part of the capital.
We talked about, excuse me, we had talked about that during capital. Yeah, to make up the 41% of the tax base that you lost, it would be basically a 3.4 cents. 3.5 was honestly kind of a round number, but also looking ahead at some of the capital needs that we have and anticipating that we're going to have more expensive capital needs, it was a step in that direction to go slightly over 3.4 cents.
What was the highway tax originally for?
Generally speaking, highways. Yeah, I can't remember.
No, but what
no,
was
I can't.
it?
I can't. No, I'm sorry.
What
I didn't mean to be flippant.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
But if you went back to that, how would it impact the capital budget? Because so much of that goes into.
So the way that we changed that a number of times recently. It was 8 cents when I first got on the board, and as we were talking about merger discussion, I'm going to move closer to the microphone. We were talking about merger discussions. We negotiated away pieces of it, and it was voted on as part of the budget. So all the numbers associated with the highway tax were included in the budget.
Right.
I believe
And
so.
So it was in that regard, it was voted by the public, sometimes from the floor, right? The rate was approved there. So I think that if we want to bring back the highway tax, we would have to propose within our budget adding the highway tax back in. And yeah, you could use that for highway capital.
That's right. I can't remember, Don.
So then wouldn't that impact that the? I'm just saying because we already have the ability. We already have the highway tax. We could bring back without having to say this year. Well, yeah, we've got this huge increase in our taxes, and we want another 1.5% in the capital.
It would still be an increase of the taxes, and what I was going to elaborate on is I can't remember if it was just towards paving, if it was also staff, if it was equipment. I can't remember exactly what went into that highway tax. I would need to
Curious how that would help or not help.
It's at the end of the day, it's money on a tax bill.
Okay.
And the other thing is just because they're asking for 3.5 cents, we don't have to give them that. Because in 2025, we've got a reassessment that's going to be complete. The amount coming from capital tax is going to go up because of that, because it's highly anticipated that everyone's property values will go up.
Well, yeah.
And so the capital tax is a flat line. I've paid $69.10 every year since 2007 on my taxes, right? So that's the last time my house was reassessed. So it's a flat line, and it'll go to a higher flat line for everybody. So
I'm just afraid if we ask for that this year with what else we're asking. But then again, there's been such little interest in what we're doing financially, so I don't know how it's going to fly.
Yeah, and the reason the reason for proposing it is that it's a tiny bit more than what we're used to getting.
Yeah.
But it's basically just to replenish what we've lost.
Right.
And that's part of, as we've talked about, trying to spend some more time on the capital budget over the coming year and fleshing out, what's the replacement schedule look like? What are some of their needs? What are those stormwater expectations that hopefully a year from now we'll have a better sense of, is 3.5 cents, is 2 cents, is it woefully underfunding? Is it just about right? Is it, close to what's right? We don't know what the reappraisal is going to come back at. It's going to be, about 2 years, 2.5 years before we have that number. We'll have a better sense then of exactly what that's going to result in. to some of the conversation earlier, we can get by this year with the 2 cent capital generating that 320,000. We're not going to be able to get by much longer and keep funding our capital with that. So if not this year, we'll be bringing it
It's a
back again
definite,
next year. If it goes on the ballot this year and it fails, we'll probably be building a case as to what it should be again next year. The need is there.
Right.
And I understand the time. I understand it's another couple percentage points on top of already a high percentage increase. The need is there.
And we did explicitly choose not to pursue local options. So
No, yeah, no, I know that. Just thinking. I have one more question though. How are you going to conduct all town business by Australian ballot? How are you going to do officers' reports?
Questionable if we would put that on the ballot or not. We haven't the past couple of years, and if people vote no, then they vote no. They don't accept it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ethan.
I just have a question about the reorganization of the charter, because when I made the motion, I said reorganization of the charter and general cleanup, and then general cleanup was advised to be removed, and then it was removed, and then the way it was proposed today was a reorganization with cleanup. So just curious about how that works for the ballot. Does it need to be called reorganization of charter with cleanup? Because I did propose that in my original motion.
I mean, the cleanup that's being proposed is that one section from the town attorney for a section that's not relevant anymore.
Agreed.
He agreed. He felt he was comfortable with that being as part of the reorganization of the charter. I think if you do it, the conversation from a few weeks ago, a general cleanup becomes what? What's a general cleanup? What's a clarification?
Changed.
Well, it's
That
not
exact
changed,
change
but
is
is
a
it also the
general
clarification people talked about earlier about what is town meeting? It just becomes what's a tweak? What's a change? How many are there? So I'm comfortable. The town attorney's comfortable with that one change being included as part of the reorganization.
Okay, I was just curious about the language. The language needed to state that we were.
It'll be fixed. We're not going to vote
changing.
on this.
No, I know. I'm
wording
just,
today.
Right. I'm just asking. That's why I brought it up.
Tracy, any thoughts on the we're jumping around a little bit here. I was trying to focus on the capital tax question, but I guess if you have any the comments, Tracy.
We're making up lost revenue, essentially. It's needed. There is a case for it. Throw it on the ballot. And as far as all future town business by Australian ballot, yes, please.
Right, because today, right, if there are some cases where the question, if it came to us, we might have to do a floor vote. It's not our, if there's no statute that says it. The clarification here, it doesn't say here, is the question, in fact, this question has to be from the floor. The question of conducting all future town business by Australian ballot has to be done from the floor.
Right.
The capital tax is a ballot question.
Yep.
So, Greg, I guess what's the path forward on these? Is this part of our? We need to public hearings on either of these questions?
That's a good question. I know part of what we need to do is finalize the language for the town meeting warning. You're going to do that on January 30th. I'll find out if you need to have public hearings beyond that for these two questions.
To some extent, it seems to me we ought to cover the capital tax question on our capital public hearings. Because if we, you know, that, you know, you said that you need 3.4 cents, but you asked for 3.5. People could certainly come back and say, well, why ask for more than you need? I guess we wait and see what people say. But I guess if we don't have to have a public hearing on it, then we won't. That's okay. So I agree that both of these questions need to be on there. My question is whether it's 3.5 cents or something. Again, in the spirit of all the other things we've done tonight, we can put what's in the proposal and see if we get a response.
Yep.
But if there's no path for a response to come, it's like 3.5 cents. See it fail because we didn't explain. Any discussion on this? Let me go look and see if I do here. Get back to the. Any public comment on any of this? Charlie.
Talk about the capital budget. I haven't heard you.
Can you come to the microphone?
I
Sorry.
haven't heard anybody talk about fire equipment. And the fire equipment, some of it does come out of the capital budget that is there now because what's transferred from operating the capital on behalf of the fire budget is grossly underfunded. And the price of fire trucks has, at least for an aerial truck, has doubled in 2 years. Ladder trucks or aerial trucks now, like the one that the city has, they paid around 800, a little over 800,000 for it. That's 1.6 million right now. And you're waiting 2 years to get it. And those costs for the 2-year wait, you pay whatever the market value goes up when you sign the contract. They don't sign it and flatline it while they decide to build it for 2 years. So simple math on a $2 million aerial truck is $100,000 a year without paying any other interest for a 20-year truck. That's substantial. So.
Yep. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. All right. So consensus that I'm hearing is that we go forward with those two questions, finalize language, and I guess understand whether we need to do hearings on either, and then yeah, I was thinking, I kind of think that since we're supposed to be providing a 5-year capital plan, that we should include information about increase. Fire is a very good example. All right. I didn't see any hands go up, so I'm going to move on. Next item is executive session. We'll come back to that. All right.
So then I'd like to make the motion, we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Don.
Second.
Thank you, Ethan.
And I'd like to thank Chief Cole for all his work on the fire department purchase, all-wheel drive truck, for the comparisons that you did.
Right.
All right.
Any further discussion?
Well, for my tour, we're going to do our tour soon.
Yeah. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Say aye.
I said aye.
Okay, Mr.
Aye, I said aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-4-0. Reading file, board member comments. Any comments?
I would, because we haven't met since that big storm, would love to thank the whole Public Works, town crew, everybody that kept this town moving through that horrendous storm. It was truly appreciated, all their work and over the holidays, and I just would like to extend our thanks to them, to the fire department that opened their doors, and everybody. It was just
Police
an
did a lot,
amazing,
too.
amazing effort, group effort. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to add to that and reiterate all of what Don said and thank the amazing community that we have, because I watched a tremendous amount of outpour from community to community members on Facebook, on Front Porch Forum, Me personally, with a bunch of people that I congregate with all the time, it was just amazing to lose power for a few days and have everybody come together and enjoy the holidays like they did, because it was I hate to say it was fun, but it was kind of fun.
Maybe we should do it more often. All right. Anything else? Want to point out that our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. It's also on a Tuesday, which is unusual. Just wanted to make that clear.
Messes me all up. I was all messed up all day.
Monday's a holiday, so we're meeting on the 17th instead of the 16th. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's a draft of the financial audit in there. I asked Greg to ask them to change the who it's addressed to whom it is addressed, because it's addressed to the Board of Selectmen. So okay. Ask them to change
It's
it to
always,
something-
it's usually that way anyway, every time we get it.
ask them to change it to something more appropriate. So hopefully they.
Is it people or persons? I always wondered.
Select board.
Select board.
Oh, just select board. But it was. But is the term changed to select people or select persons?
So no, it's our charter used to in the 8 pages that our charter is, it has 63 occurrences of the word select man or select men. Legislature changed it to select board member sometime in the last 2 years, and they never told
That's
us.
what it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I remember.
So it's just
the
a
change, but I
select
couldn't remember
board,
what
it's
the
a
word
select board
was.
member now. Yeah. And so prior managers used to say, well, we have to call you select men because that's what's in your charter. The case.
Hearing no other discussion, Mr. Chairman, I move that the select board enter executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A2 and to include the town manager.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan, for the second. Any further discussion?
I'm assuming we're not coming back after?
We won't be coming back for anything, so we'll just open the door up there and adjourn from there. Scott, you can back up. And okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, we'll go into executive session upstairs and